And you're back here on the Gill Connections Podcast. Man, I'm so pumped that you would press play today. Again, humbled. Every play that I get, whether I get one or a million, and trust me, we're closer to that latter than the former. I am just humbled that you would be here to listen to our amazing guests, our coaches from around the country, sometimes around the world. And it'll never leave me that how special it is that you would press play. This is a hard podcast to listen to. It's long, right? And so typically it takes you breaks. I had a coach called me the other day and said that they were on a 3 hour drive. And so they got through half of, no, they didn't get through half one. They got through a whole one and they were just thanking that guest and thanking us for putting that out there. So again, really appreciate that. For you guys and gals that are new here, my name, I'm the host here, is Mike Cunningham. I guess my official title is National Business Development Manager or something like that for Gill Athletics, but most people know me as the podcast guy or even the Twitter guy. So having a lot of fun there, and we are going to have fun today. I'm pumped for this. I love bringing you coaches from different perspectives, different divisions, different backgrounds. And, we're over 350 episodes. We've certainly had 350 distinct backgrounds. And I just know today's is going to be awesome as well. So help me welcome from the great state of Minnesota, Winona State University, the director of track and field, cross country. We're going to learn more about all of that here. Welcome the wise, the wonderful Mr. Mason Rebarchek.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, I did it. I did it the other way. The
No,
Rebarchek.
no,
Hey,
you're,
see,
you're all
I
good.
knew I was going to mess that up. Mason,
No, you didn't.
good morning, brother. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Make me feel a little better. So I got it right because you corrected me. It's Winona State.
Yep.
How many people call it Winona? And what does Winona mean? Is it the city? How did we get Winona State? What's
Yeah.
the name there?
Yeah. So it's the name of the city.
Okay.
I'd say it's maybe 50-50. People get it
Hmm.
wrong. And I don't know if they get it wrong on purpose, right? If there are rivals and they say it wrong on
Oh, sure.
purpose. No, it is funny when people come for job interviews and they pronounce it wrong. It really, it's number one no-no in a job interview because people on the committee, they get really annoyed if the interviewing
Sure.
person says it wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just a Native American legend about a daughter named Winona, and that's kind of how it got its name. At
Okay.
least that's what I've heard.
Yeah. Have you guys, this is just interesting to me. So I graduated from Troy State University, but after I graduated, they wanted a more universal name, meaning they didn't want to like tie it down to the state of just Alabama. So it's now Troy University. I still call it Troy State because that's what my degree says, and they didn't ask me my opinion. Has Winona State, have you ever heard of rumblings of them trying to, see, I said Winona again.
You did.
Winona State. I know. I saw you smile. I was like, oh man, Winona State. Have you heard rumblings of them trying to wanting to go to Winona University, or is it just that they're smarter than our Troy guys and they're like, it doesn't matter, bro?
No, I love the name. I know at some point in our history, the schools in the Minnesota State system, I don't know if they were told to make a choice, but at some point, a couple of schools went with Minnesota State and then the name of the
Hmm.
town,
Hmm.
and then others of us, so like Minnesota State Mankato, Minnesota State Moorhead, and
Right.
then others of us stuck with like St. Cloud State,
Right.
Bemidji State, Winona State.
So those could have been Minnesota State, Winona, Minnesota State,
Right.
South Cloud, et
Yeah.
cetera.
And
Oh,
Mankato and
interesting.
Moorhead used to be Mankato State and Moorhead State.
Oh yeah, that's right. I did know that. I didn't think about that though. Yeah, kind of
Yep.
like the UW system is all UW Lacrosse, UW Eau Claire.
Yep.
Yeah. That's
Yep.
interesting. Well, we didn't come here to get a lesson on Winona's history. I do always appreciate that though, because I do. I kind of find that kind of stuff fascinating. We came here to learn more about you, my friend, Mason. Somewhere along the way, track became a part of your life. You didn't just become a track coach and didn't do it, but we also know that you didn't necessarily have to be an athlete. We've had plenty of amazing coaches on the podcast that didn't do track as an athlete. Where in the world does track and field start for you?
Yeah, so I think I give credit to my seventh grade PE teacher, who was the middle school coach, Sam Service, great guy. We just had a track and field unit in seventh grade PE,
Hmm.
and I must have won the 40-yard dash or something. And you do that, and you're a seventh grade kid. You're like, oh, I'm fast. I should do track and field. And so I think that's what got me to start it. But I give Sam all the credit for really setting the course of my life because he's the one that put me in the hurdles.
Oh,
And
nice.
he's a great hurdle coach, even at the seventh grade level, had me doing drills that are relevant. I was an okay enough sprinter. I maybe could have gone to college in the 100 or the 200, but I never would have made anything of it,
Yeah.
championship wise or whatever. But the hurdles became my thing,
I
and
love it.
yeah, I give Sam all the credit in the world for really setting the course of my life from the start.
I knew we had a kindred spirit together because hurdles are my thing too. My first email address ever was hurdlelove@hotmail.com. So I
My
love
email
that.
address is still it's run110HH. Yeah.
Nice, nice, nice. Love it.
Yeah.
I just got my license plate. I had this when I was at Troy. My license plate was Hurdle, and I don't know why it's taken me, gosh, 40 years later or whatever it's been. Now my license plate here in Illinois says Hurdle as well. I couldn't believe it
Yeah.
was available. Like literally when I was typing it in, I was fully expecting because I think everybody loves hurdles. I'm like, oh, someone's got hurdle, and they didn't. So I was pretty happy about that. Um, it's funny that you talked about hurdling in middle school. Uh, I just literally yesterday had a phone call with a former athlete of mine, a decathlete at Mississippi State, and his son is a seventh grader and is doing middle school track. And he was like, Dad, uh, I've never done hurdles. Like, why would I do hurdles? I've never done hurdles. And he was like, son, you're in middle school. No one's done hurdles. And my daughter, who's also seventh grade, just had track practice start this week and for shot put. And, she's like, Dad, everybody's a noob. And I was like, you're in middle. Like, what do you mean? Of course. Like, I didn't understand that. Was there any trepidation? Because, the hurdles, it's one thing to run in front of your peers and things like that. It's another thing to run with obstacles in front of you. Was there any trepidation when coach first introduced the hurdles to you?
I don't recall that. No.
You just like, okay, I'm going to run, but I'm
Yeah.
going to hop over 10 things.
Yeah, the one it's funny how the memories that we have, right? Like millions of things happen in seventh grade, and
Right.
there's just a couple of very vivid memories you have. So the truly the only memory I have of that seventh grade season was being in the cafeteria, and he had some hurdles set up, and he's showed me how to do like a trail leg walkover drill, and he said, "Do these till I come back," and then he went and coached whoever else, and then at some point he must have came back, but that's the memory that I have is trail leg walkovers. Do these till I come back,
How
and that
long did that?
no idea, no idea. It could have been 5 minutes, could have been a half
Oh,
hour.
okay, okay.
I
I
have
was
no
waiting for you to tell me like you're like an hour later. I was like, oh, please, can I stop, coach?
no, that's the memory is just showing me
Wow.
that drill and say do these till I come back.
That's interesting. Do you know who Malcolm Gladwell is? Do you know that name, an author? You've maybe certainly heard the book Outliers or Tipping Point,
Sure.
because you
Yeah.
get a lot of books. You've had to have heard of these books. Yeah.
Yeah.
Malcolm Gladwell, who's also a big track fan, he was a miler back in the day, has a podcast called Revisionist History, and he did a two-parter on memories and how we think memories are like this VHS tape that in our head, and we just rewind and go to here, and it's like, oh no, actually memories, because you're right. You're like, well, how can you not remember? Relatively, was it 30 minutes, an hour, 3 hours? It's like, yeah, that's my memory. Just remembers that he left. It said to keep doing them, and so I did them, but I have no clue. A lot of times people fill in stuff and just go, "Oh yeah, it was an hour," and then you ask coach, and he's like, "Yeah, I was gone 5 minutes. What are you talking about?" It's just
Yeah.
interesting how memories work. It's kind of fascinating, actually.
Yeah.
What sticks? How did that progress through high school? Did you keep doing the hurdles?
Yeah. Yeah. I did. Yeah, I got into high school and um, funny first day of high school track story. You're new, you don't really know the coaches yet, and they're like, all right, sprinters over here, distance over here, throwers over here. And so I heard sprinters, and I'm like, well, hurdling is sprinting. So I went with that group, and they had just the hardest workout, right? It's like 6 400s or something out on the street
Oh,
because there's still snow on the ground and whatever. So we go do that. Ninth grade, you don't train between seasons in ninth grade, right?
right.
You're just getting there and you do it. And then so we do that, and then I come the next day, and someone says something about hurdles. I'm like, oh, well, I'm a hurdler. I didn't know there was another group. Well, it turns out they did like something easy on the first day. They were doing something hard on the second day. So I'm like, oh, I'm a hurdler.
Oh
So
no.
the first 2 days were like those brutal workouts. But yeah, no. So just got in the hurdle group. Had great hurdle coaches in high school too. Brad Chamberlain was our hurdle coach that first year, and we're really fortunate. Went to Alaska High School. It's, I don't know, a 10-minute drive from UW La Crosse. And so each year we kind of had a revolving door of UWL guys that were done with their eligibility but hadn't graduated yet,
Oh,
or were still around town. And so I had just countless All-American, UWL guys as coaches over the years.
interesting.
I'm sure, Bill Schrader, he played for the Packers for a lot of years, and anyway, my junior year, it was that spring that he got drafted by the Packers. So he was coaching at Alaska, and then in April or whatever got drafted. And so
That's
he
cool.
was there my junior year, and so anyway, yeah. So just got into it, and funny story. This is a little bit off track, but I know you love coaches and coaches' stories. So Steve Blocker at Poirier State, he's gotten out of coaching now,
Mhm.
but he and I met at the Coaches Association a number of years ago. We were on a committee together, and just like this conversation now, just sort of where are you from, where'd you go to
Mhm.
school, that sort of thing, and uh, and he's like, yeah, I'm from Arizona, but I went to Augsburg up in the Twin Cities, and I went to UWL. He's like, oh, I only ran one meet in my life ever at UWL. And I'm like, oh, what year? And it's whatever 2001 or something like that. I'm like, oh, I would have been in that meet. And so it turns out we raced each other once,
No
and
shot.
yeah, and then so we keep talking, and he said something about actually this might have come first, from Wisconsin, and he goes, "Oh, my high school hurdle coach is from Wisconsin." I go, "Oh, that's funny. My high school hurdle coach moved to Arizona." And I was like, "Wasn't Brad Chamberlain, was it?" He goes, "Yeah." So we had the same high school hurdle
No
coach,
way.
yeah, that moved from Wisconsin to Arizona. And then yeah, so then it turns out we found out we raced each other once. And then maybe 3 or 4 months later, my daughter, who was maybe, I don't know, 7, 8 years old at the time, comes up from the basement. She's looking through some boxes. Like, Dad, I found some pictures. Is this you hurdling? And I'm looking at her, I'm like, I think that's Steve. So, back in the late 90s, nobody took pictures of anything. I have like 5 total pictures of myself hurdling, and one of them has Steve. And so I take a picture, send it to Steve. I'm like, is this you? He's like, yep, that's me. So sure enough, one of those random pictures is me and Steve racing each other that one time that we ever raced each other.
Dude, that's like buying a lottery ticket type stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Holy cow. Um, that's interesting. I wonder, my memory is, first of all, not that good as I get older, but also, I can have a little grace for myself that, 350 episodes. Steve Blocker was one of our guests. He's a Gill podcast alum. And I wonder if he shared that
Yeah.
story because that feels like the kind of story he also would share and be like,
I don't,
happenstance. That's just crazy to me.
yeah. Yeah. So we took a quick selfie and Facebook messaged it over to Chamby, and
Yeah.
we go, hey, do you know these guys? He goes, yeah, one of them was, and he said something, one of them wasn't very fast, but he could still hurdle, and the other one something, and so yeah, so as far as I know, he's still in Arizona, and he messaged both of us a few years ago. He had a hurdler and high school hurdler, and so he's still coaching down in Arizona. But anyways,
The just the story of you guys raced at the same track and that alone is like that's a million to one.
yeah,
That coach though, because of the Arizona, that is,
yeah,
I mean, that pulls the one in a billion. That's really amazing, actually.
yeah,
Holy cow. Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah,
How did hurdlers are what year did you graduate high school? That helps me with time frame.
yeah, 96.
Oh, okay. So I was 94. Okay. What kind of track athlete were you? And what I mean by that, I don't care about your PRs. I've never cared about anybody's PRs because that has zero to do with your coaching ability to be
Yeah,
real. I mean, we've had Jeremy Warner, Olympic gold medalist, on here. My number one question to him was, "Hey, did you ever try the 800?" That's the big internet thing. Never, he said. By the way, that was never a thought for him.
yeah,
But I didn't even ask him his PR. I was like, "Who cares?" What I
yeah.
really mean by what kind of track athlete you were is it's 90, 92 to 96 when you're in high school. We really don't have the internet at that point. There was some, I remember doing some internet in high school, but
Yeah.
message board stuff, not no
Yeah.
search engines, no Google, etc. Were you the kind like how well did you know other her Alan Johnsons and can't think of anybody else now, but there's amazing others, maybe Angela Taylor. Uh, were you the kind of guy that knew all the other good hurdlers worldwide or even
No,
regionally? And kind of adjunct to that question, did you go to the library to read books? Like, how did you feed that hurdle nerddom, if you will?
yeah. No, I don't think I knew a lot of athletes. I knew Alan Johnson. I think just from the Olympics,
Mhm.
96. Maybe I watched 92. Um, but no, I don't think I knew a lot of names. Maybe the world record holder or just a few names here and there. Who's the guy at Wisconsin at the time? Was it Reggie Torian? Was
Oh
that his
my
name?
God, Reggie
Um,
Torian, who I met, who had the biggest calves I'd ever seen when I met him at the 97, I think 97 NCAA champs in Indiana. Yeah, great guy. What is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you just knew a few names.
Hmm.
I definitely wasn't a track nerd or hurdle nerd.
Yeah. Okay.
Just had really great coaching.
Hmm.
Just enjoyed competing. I just loved to this day. I wish I could still go and hurdle. I mean, it's just so much fun.
That's awesome. I'm glad your body would allow that because mine would. I
Oh
would.
no,
It
no,
would.
I would not. No,
Okay.
I would still. Yeah, no, I said I
The
wish I could.
mind wants to. Yeah, yeah. The
No,
body
yeah,
says
your
we're
mind.
good. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I love that. You didn't have YouTube and things like that when you had all these. I love these, kids coming from UW lacrosse to help out because there's a little bit like, oh, wow, they're really stinking good. Oh, by the way, they're doing 42s and like, were you constantly like, picking their brain? Because what I'm always fascinated about is, and we're going to get to the point here soon about like, what did you think you're going to become? Because most of us 99% of all the guests we've had here did not as a high schooler think I am going to be a track coach. Some did. Some were track coach kids and things like that who have a little bit more proclivity to that. But most of us are thinking we're going to go become doctors, firefighters, lawyers, all that kind of stuff. But we know, spoiler, you became a track coach. So I'm always wondering, like, oh, did you exhibit track coach kind of stuff? Like, were you like always? I read every book, or I was in the coach's office every day. Hey, why do we do this trail leg drill? Why do we do that? Anything like that with the coaches, or you're just like, okay, you told me to run, I'll go run.
Yeah, so a few things come to mind when you asked that. Yeah, sort of. It's just tell me to go run, I'll go run.
Hmm.
Whatever the workout is, let's go do it. Never really asked questions. Never really a student of the sport, and at least in high school.
Yeah, that's fair.
Um,
Yeah.
just to do what you're told and go race. And
Hmm.
and the one funny thing that you said, and this is this is definitely on the edge of silly. But you talked, what is it that, did you know you were going to be a coach someday? And like you said, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I have, again, one of those little moment in time memories. I had to be first grade at the oldest, and maybe one of my first memories. But I remember there was this big field behind our house, and where kids would play. There's a little playground, whatever. And for whatever reason, we were running from one end to the other end, and it might have been looking back, I don't know, 300-400 meters in length. And all the neighborhood kids were running. And there's this little girl next to me, a couple years younger, maybe not keeping up, whatever. And I just have this recollection of turning to her and saying, "Run faster than you can," like just trying to coach this little girl as a 7-year-old, right? It's
Yeah.
so I feel like is my moment in time of people ask, did you ever
Yeah.
be a coach? No, not really, other than maybe, oh, maybe when I'm, older and I have kids in high school, maybe I'll coach high school or whatever,
Right.
never,
Right.
never that inkling of being a coach, but that little moment in time sticks out to me.
We typically find because coaching is I hesitate sometimes to say a very selfless profession because I'm a little bit against there is selfishness that needs to happen as well, your own health, wealth, etc., so that you can help yourself so you can help others, kind of a philosophy. But it is different than being an accountant, from being a sales professional. It's actually very similar to sales professional. But a principal, business owner, etc., there are little things like that memory right there. There are little things along the way, even how you thought about caring about other individuals. Like, oh man, I wish so and so was could do better in math or better court. There's just things that as a 14, 15, 16-year old, it just registers as like, oh, well, that was my friend, or oh, I was being friendly. And in reality, it's like, oh, well, that's actually the seedlings of what we do in track and field every day now as a coach. So that's an interesting story. I love that. That little girl somewhere going, man, this kid was crazy. He told me to run faster than I could. I don't know what he was talking about. He didn't become no
There's,
coach. He don't know what he's
there's,
talking about.
there's no way whoever that little girl was remembers that moment, right? Those moments in time.
I don't believe that because the reverse could be true. She's probably
Maybe.
listen to this. She's on a podcast. She's a an accountant, and she's on a podcast up for accountants because I'm sure those exist. I don't listen to them, but I'm sure they exist. And she's telling the host the story. This is an odd memory. This kid, he was a little bit older than me. I don't even remember who he was or what he became. I don't know everything. But he turns to me and says the weirdest thing. He says, "Run faster than you can." And I was like, well, that's just dumb. That doesn't compute to my analytical mind. What are you talking about? I'm a little kid. You know what I'm saying? And she goes, and that boy doesn't remember that little one-off state. You know what I'm saying? Like I guarantee
It's funny.
you it's not outside the realm possibility, I
Yeah.
should say, that it was a memory for her, just like it was a memory for you. I love that. Remember, memories are crazy. We don't
Yeah.
know exactly how they all work. So it's odd what we sometimes remember. Okay, were you on like the education front, where did you remember peppering coaches about technique? I get that you didn't ask, like, because when you said like first day of practice was like 6 400s, I'm like, oh, you poor soul. Like I'm glad you survived and kept going, and did another hard one the next day, by the way, because the hurdlers, the timing of it. Um, but any hurdlers can be very technique focused, like, oh, were you like that, like, and so you're asking questions about where's arm placement, anything like that, or is it still just like natural
Yeah, I don't
movement?
think I asked the questions. I
Yeah.
didn't know that I knew I should ask any questions. I think
Hmm.
just whatever they told me, I tried to do.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so, yeah, I was very technical. My college coach, he told me once, he's like, I don't know how you hurdle so fast with as slow as your 100 time is. And,
Okay.
he and a couple teammates have commented on just my technical, my technique was really what stood out or made me successful.
Because stay in high school for me, because you were taught it, or because it was natural?
I think both.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I mean, I was taught it, and again, maybe it goes back to those, stay here till I come back. Maybe I did 1,000 trail leg drills that day, and that's how I
Right.
learned to have a good trail leg. It could go back that far. I don't know.
My I say my friend, I wish I knew him, Malcolm Gladwell, he came up with, he helped bring up the term of the rule of 10,000 hours. Yeah, maybe you have
Mhm.
10,000 hours of trail leg
It's
drills.
possible. Yeah.
I love it. Any other sports?
Um, I played baseball 2 summers as a little kid. Wasn't good at that. And as far as high school goes, I was fairly fast, and I think the high school football coach would send out letters to anybody that was maybe good in another sport. I don't know. I got a letter every summer, never did it.
Hmm.
And I had played football in eighth grade and did not have a good experience, so I wasn't planning on doing it again.
Yeah.
So, spring of junior year, I had a good track season, and so got the letter from the football coach, and I had previously been in band, and I loved playing,
Hmm.
band for football games and whatever. And I wasn't in band senior year, and so I get that letter, and the football team was 0-9 my junior year, and I
Oh.
get that letter, and I'm like, well, I'm really not, I can't catch very good. I'm not, never really played football, but I can't make the team any worse. The worst that could
Can't
happen
go
is I'm a
negative in
cheer.
9.
Yeah, I mean, worst that could happen is I'm on the sidelines and I cheer on the team and whatever.
Yeah.
And so get to first day or uniform checkout or whatever. We're getting numbers or whatever.
Right.
And coach said something, what position? And I said, well, I'm pretty fast, maybe a defensive back. I don't catch very well. He's like, no, you're a wide receiver. I'm like, oh, okay.
Did you not hear me,
And
sir? I said I can't catch very
yes, I think all he knew was that I was fast. And
well. Hmm.
and that what was going to happen was I was going to play wide receiver. So I
Right.
kind of feel bad for the guy that I took his spot, but I ended up being able to be the starting wide receiver that senior year. And
That's cool.
the thing was, we had probably one of the best running backs in the state. So we ran the ball 99 times out of 100. I think we had one receiving touchdown the whole year. And
That's why his receiver is like, yeah, we're gonna make people think we're gonna throw.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, the quarterback and I just couldn't connect in practice. He'd underthrow me, and in or games he'd overthrow me, and I think he just got so jacked during games that he just launches it, and we just could never connect. But yeah, so that was really it, and I'm glad for that experience because it just really taught me just the value of camaraderie, and just football is just different,
Yeah.
and definitely taught me another good lesson. I got halfway through the season, and I just remember getting to seventh or eighth hour in the school day and just dreading, just being like, I just don't want to go to football today. And had this teammate, Chad Dwyer, and every single day we'd walk out of the locker room or walk outside the school building. And I remember, again, this one memory of being behind him. He'd have his helmet, he'd throw his helmet up in the air and just like shout, like, it's a beautiful day for football, literally every day. And so this one day I'm sitting in English class, that seventh hour, and just being like, I don't want to go to football. And something clicked at that moment of just attitude, right? And it's like, you know
Mm.
what? Why am I doing this? If I'm not going to enjoy it, why do it? And so, for whatever reason, at that moment, I decided, um, you know what? No, I'm gonna flip the switch and have a good attitude about it. And so, as soon as I'd have that negative thought, I'd say, nope, it's a beautiful day for football. And so I
Oh,
just made
interesting.
that switch, and for the rest of the season, I loved it. And I've used that story with my athletes all the time. I tell them
Yeah.
that your mind you can trick yourself into a lot of things. And just from the standpoint of you think you've done your last rep and you can't do any more, no, don't buy it. You can do it. Or, people say choose your attitude. I don't really use that phrase, but
Mhm.
just that idea that, you got to decide, what kind of attitude, it's gonna rain or snow at the meet today. You got to choose, to be like, it doesn't matter. It's going to rain on everybody else too.
That
And so,
that's
you just got to go compete.
that's really interesting. I thought you were going in the direction of like I was going to commend you for your maturity level, and maybe still I will. We'll see. Meaning like you were like, hey, life is short. Why am I doing something that I don't enjoy? Because it's optional. It's not like, well, I can get out of math class because I don't enjoy math. Well, you
Right.
got to take math. It's like football. You don't have to play, but
Yeah.
I did enjoy track, so I stayed with track. But which would have been commendable. Why play a sport or an extracurricular activity that you don't enjoy because and I'm not hearing this in your story, but because mom wants you or dad wants you or because peer pressure as a teen and things like that. But yours is a little bit different and maybe better in the sense of you saw that from your friend Chad and was like, oh, if it sounds weird to say trick myself, but if I at least start with the positive attitude, it might get better. And it did. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those feelings of not really loving to play in football, did you compare those? Like, was there ever a time where you're like, man, I'm kind of dreading going out there? Did you ever compare that to like, boy, when it's the seventh, eighth period and it's track season, I can't wait to get out there. Did you ever like that thought as a 16,
I don't,
17-year-old kid?
I
I
don't
guess a
know that I
senior
ever
year,
thought
17.
that, but yeah, I
Yeah.
absolutely loved. There was never
Yeah.
a day that I said, "Ugh, track practice."
You're right.
Well,
Yeah.
oh man, I've just always loved training and practice and hurdling and being around my teammates. And there's never been a day
Hmm. I love that.
that
That's cool.
that I recall not looking forward to it.
So you're a senior, you played football in the fall, you have your senior year of track season. We start thinking about college. Talk to us about that process, how the actual process of picking a school. Did you run in college? Again,
Eh,
most of us don't. If you run in college, I know probably the majority of people that listen and are on the show are did college athletics in some form or fashion. I did not, by the way. And so we kind of think it's commonplace. We got to remember it's like less than 7% of high school track athletes go on to do college. It is still a fraternity of this bit small. So I have no, if you said no, I didn't run college track, but no judgment there. And at the same time, you're telling us that the recruiting towards college journey. What were you as a senior in high school? What were you thinking? I'm going to go major in X because I'm going to become a Y, or maybe you're like a lot of 17, 18-year-old kids are like, I have no clue. I just know I'm going to college.
Yeah, no, a couple stories there. So I had no interest in going to college. I had three
At
different,
all.
yeah, no, I had three different military service whatever recruiters over to the house,
Wow.
trying to decide if I wanted to.
History of military in the family?
No, zero.
You just were like,
Um,
if I'm not going to college, I'm going military.
I don't know why. I don't know why that appealed to
Wow.
me. I don't know if it was just the testosterone of 17-year-old boy wanting to shoot guns, and when there was no thought like what I know about the army now. Like there's just thousands of jobs. When you're 17, you're like, yeah, you go to the army and you shoot guns. Like that's what the
Right. Yeah.
army.
Yeah. Yeah. There's money. Yeah.
Or you go to the Air Force and you fly the jets. Like you
Right.
don't know
Right.
that there's 1,000 other jobs in the Air Force,
So,
right?
so you had Army, Air Force, and Navy,
Marines, not
Marines. So,
Navy. I don't want to be on a boat.
okay, that's what I was
And
going.
yeah, so but I thought I'd want to be a Marine, but then they're like, yeah, that's how you travel is on boats. I'm like,
Right.
oh
I was
no,
also you on a boat, brother.
the Army travels in planes. Let's do the Army. And so it was kind of going down that road. And at some point, I was like, yeah, but then I can't do track anymore. And I remember the Army guy being like, no, you can do track in the Army. And then I'm like, yeah,
That all sound
I
right.
think so.
Right.
And so at some point, I don't know if it was spring of junior year or summer before. I don't know when this happened, but at some point, I'm like, no, I want to run.
Hmm.
So I was, people asked, "What'd you go to school for?" And I say, "I went to school for track."
Yeah.
I was just there long enough that they gave me a degree.
When you were thinking, because so this was junior and before junior, you were thinking military.
Yeah.
Any pressure from parents of like, what do you do? No, no, you need to go to college, son, or family, anything?
One of the things I value most about my parents is they never, my dad was a three-sport high school athlete. Never once did they push me into doing sports.
Awesome.
Never once did they push me into band or anything. They
Love that.
let me know of opportunities, and then I choose them. But no, there was never a you're going to college. Neither of, I mean, my dad went straight into the workforce.
Hmm.
My mom went to college for a year or two, and then ended up working for her dad. Um, so it's not, we weren't a several generations
Yeah,
college
yeah, yeah,
family, right?
yeah.
Um, so no, there's no pressure
Hmm.
about any of those things. And so yeah, so at some point it was um, yeah, I just really want to run in college. I had no interest in going away. I literally did not tour any schools. I didn't look into any schools. UWL was 10 minutes from my house, but I couldn't have driven there if you put me in a car and said, let's go to UWL. I had no reason to go to lacrosse. Everything I needed was in my town, right? Shopping and school and whatever. And um, and I didn't even know that they were good, to be honest with you. I had no clue. I just knew that they had a track team, and I was going to do finance was the major I landed on. They had those things, and
Well,
so
why finance?
no idea. I have a picture, when you graduate high school, they give you this packet of stuff they've collected over the years of like
Okay.
stuff you did in elementary school, middle school, whatever. And I get handed this packet of stuff. And in this packet was a picture from second grade that you're supposed to draw what you want to be when you grow up. And mine was a picture of a dude in a suit behind a desk.
No way.
No idea why.
Wow,
And
interesting.
yeah, no idea. And so at some point, I thought stocks and bonds and investing would be cool. I don't know. And so I was going to do finance at lacrosse. I didn't know that they were any good. So this would have been, lacrosse won. They had won 87 and 88, but they really started their dynasty 91, 92, 93, and 94. They won four indoors in a row and then three outdoors.
Oh,
Yeah, and I had no idea. And so this would have been, 95, just after that, string of wins had started. And and so I had no idea they were any good until I get a letter in the mail. And on the corner of the envelope, it says national champions,
all right.
87, 88, 91, 92, 93, 94. I'm like, dang, that's kind of cool. And I had already decided in my mind I was going there. I don't even know if I'd talked to Coach Guthrie yet. That's
All
where I was
right.
going to school.
All right.
And yeah, so finance for whatever reason, I don't know. And like I said, I was going there for track. And that was that.
And you were this sounds a little odd because I'm not hearing like Guthrie recruited you necessarily like they knew you were I mean eventually you got letter but like were you good enough to be on the UW team and what I mean by that is because we don't talk times you could have been a 22nd 110 higher I think I was about a 22nd 110 guy I was sucked
Yeah.
meaning you probably not good
Yeah.
enough for UW lacrosse but you were
So,
like it was
yeah, I
oh
mean, so junior year when coaches, back in the day when all you could do is send out letters, right? And I was getting letters from different schools,
okay
and so I don't know if I just assumed
yeah
I was good enough. I
yeah
don't really know. The University of Wisconsin had sent me a letter, and so I was like, okay, I never even considered going to a visit. I knew I wasn't going to go there, and yeah, I don't know if my coach told me I was good enough.
yeah
I
yeah yeah
thought maybe since I was at state, I was good enough. I really don't know.
Yeah, that's a good barometer. Yeah, if I'm at state, because as a high schooler, that's what you're trying to get to is state. That's still everybody knows that's a big meet. Whether you are still not that great or not, if you go to state, that's a big deal.
Yeah,
So state's kind of like you're like, oh, okay. Well, if I went to state, I can go somewhere. Like because it
yeah,
doesn't even sound like you really know. Because again, this is before it's hard to investigate other schools in '96, and I can Google and heck, I can have GPT tell me the difference between UW Lacrosse, UW Madison, and
yeah,
Winona State. It gives
yeah,
me this analysis that is just non-existent in '96. So makes a lot of sense that you're like, yeah, I went to Lacrosse, it was right there. If I'd have been 10 minutes from Madison, I might have ended up going to Madison. I don't know.
yeah,
That makes a lot of sense.
absolutely.
Yeah, and you go in
Yeah,
for
and so
finance. Hmm.
yeah, so when I got there, I don't remember at some point early in the fall, freshman year, maybe I found out how good the team was and found out not everybody makes the team. And
Oh, and you had
since
hold on. You had throughout high school, you said you had UW lacrosse hurdlers coming over to coach. So you kind of had an idea too, because I'm sure you talking to those kids and like I
I don't think so.
no, you had to have asked like, hey, so like what are you running the 110? You
I don't think so. I
really?
mean, maybe I don't know. I don't recall anything like that. I just know they were
Yeah.
our coaches. Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay, all right, keep going. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Hmm.
Yeah. No, and so I have this recollection of early that fall, maybe realizing how good the team was. Matter of fact, I remember just yesterday, we were waiting for the eligibility meeting at the beginning of the year, and we were in the room, and I remember, a room full of, college guys with egos. I just remember Guthrie being like, all right, well, while we're waiting, how many of you guys stand up if you're in the state meet? Everybody stands up. All right. Stay standing if you are state champ. All right. Stand up if you
Did
have
you
been to the
did
national.
did you stand up? Were you a
No, no,
state
no,
champ?
no, no.
Okay, no,
I
I
just
just wanted
remember
to.
this
Yeah,
room full of
yeah,
guys
yeah,
where
yeah,
he's
yeah.
going,
So
how
you
many of
sat
you are
down,
state,
right? Hmm.
yeah, how many of you are state champs? How many of you are to the
Right, right,
national
right,
meet? How many All-Americans? How many
right.
national champions? And so you're looking around the room going, whoa,
Holy
wow,
crap!
this is a lot of guys who've had a lot of success. And so I don't know if it was after that, but I remember asking Guthrie one day, like, am I going to make the team? And I just remember sort of a pat on the back, like kind of laughing, like, you're going to make the team. I'm like, okay. So
What's interesting about that story there, Mason, is that you you might not have ever thought about this, but I think about these things because this is what I do for a living. That was a fork in the road, even though you don't necessarily maybe think of that as a fork in the road. You easily could have quit the team that night, the next day, because of intimidation. Like, holy, wait a minute. I made it to state meet. I thought that was a big deal, which it was. But all of these dudes made the state meet. And when he said, hey, if you're a state champion, stay standing up, I had to sit down, and there were still a
I
lot
didn't
of
sit down.
people. Did you stay standing up? Shut up.
Champ, come on.
And then when it's like, well, how many of you guys are all Americans? And then more people sit down, but still there's a lot of people standing up. And then you're like, which one of you guys are national champs? Because they had national champs, and there's still not one, more than one is standing up. And you're just like you could have easily been like, oh, wait a minute, I'm a little out of my depth here. I'm gonna go become a student or something.
No,
But you didn't.
no,
You
I knew what I wanted to do, and I
yeah.
knew I wanted to be there, and I don't think there was ever a thought of not doing it.
Yeah, yeah. But that's what I'm saying. For you, you don't realize it was a fork in the road because you only saw one side of that. Yeah, I'm going on. I'm continuing. There was that option, that story, the other side, this multiverse, if you will, of saying, "Hey, I'm intimidated. I'm not doing this." Absolutely happens every day on college campuses, on high school teams, when the coach says, "Hey, it's your first day. We're going to do 6x400." Whoa, wait a minute. I can't do one 400. What are you talking about? I'll just go play pickleball or baseball or whatever. Not equating those two, by the way. If you're a baseball player, don't get mad at me. But that's what's interesting to me is that it to you it wasn't a fork in the road. You're like, no, no, I knew what I was doing. I didn't see another path. This was the path I
Yeah,
was going on.
yeah.
So how'd that work out?
How'd what work out? Being on the team?
Yeah,
It was awesome. I mean, it was best experience ever. I mean, I say this in coaching and recruiting. I wish every 18-year-old got a chance to be a college athlete.
yeah,
Just because of both what I've seen as an athlete and as coach, everything you learn, just how it makes you as a person, all the lessons you learn about failure. And I just a little tangent. I just know how many companies out there actively seek out former
mhm,
college athletes because if you're a 4.0 college student that's never failed at anything, certainly at some point in your career something's not going to go well, and do you know how to handle that? And
right,
employers know that a college athlete, they certainly had failure at some point. There's no way they never failed. And whether it's injury, whether it's losing a race, losing a game, losing whatever, at some
yeah.
point you failed and you had to learn how to deal with that. And so just all of the things you learn, from being an athlete, I wish every 18-year-old had a chance to be a college athlete.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's a lot of resilience. Uh, I love how you said that even the greatest athlete, a baton drops in a relay, uh, misses a pass, strikes out, etc. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good point. Did you stay finance the whole time?
Yeah, yeah. I think I just knew that I thought finance, whatever, investment, stocks, bonds, that kind
Mm-hmm.
of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also the kind of person that I'm very single-minded about things.
Okay.
They say psychologists will say that human nature, once we've decided on something, it's hard to get us to change our own mind because then that's like admitting we were wrong.
Mm,
So like if you've decided in your mind, I want to buy this particular car, even though a different car might be better for you, or something even more simple, you've decided you want to go somewhere for lunch and someone's trying to talk you into something else. It's hard to get us to change our
yeah.
mind because that's admitting that we were wrong about a decision we made.
Hmm.
And so I think I'm very much that way. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've been in the same job for 22 years.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know, you said football, I could have quit. That never crossed my mind.
Yeah.
It wasn't quit. It was change something to make it better.
Has
So I don't
has
know if
that
I'm just
ever
naturally committed to things or
has that ever bitten you in the butt before?
what, being
I,
committed to something.
yeah, I don't even know how to say it because I don't necessarily want to say committed, but I don't want to say single-minded either. But that
I'm sure it has. I'm sure I've held on to something longer than necessary. I don't know. I mean, half the clothes I wear are older than my athletes. And I mean, this
so in
shirt I'm
fashion
wearing,
sense, it has bitten you in the butt. I got it.
yeah, no. See, so that's the other thing is I'm very adamant about I don't like trends. I like things that are timeless. And so if something is trendy, I don't like it because I know it's going to change at some point and will no longer be trendy anymore.
So are you still
Um,
listening to music from the 90s and
oh, stop it. Like you don't. It's another thing. It's another psychology
wait,
thing.
hey, this is my show. How dare you call me out?
I'm just telling you that all of us, our whatever was the music of our coming of age, that's what we
100%.
is the best. I literally ask anyone, whatever your coming of age time was, that's
Okay,
the music. That's the
we
best to you.
we're within
Admit it.
100%, bro. Come on.
Okay.
I have been to a concert series called the I Love the 90s tour
Oh,
probably 15 times. So yeah,
yeah.
bro. My admitted, everybody knows this, Mason. My favorite musical artist is Vanilla Ice. So
I knew you
yeah,
were going to say that.
yeah,
As
I
soon
know,
as
I
you
know.
said
That's
I
what I'm
love
saying.
the 90s,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I was
Everybody
like, I
knows.
know Vanilla Ice is on that tour, and he's going to
Hun-
say Vanilla Ice is his favorite. I knew you were going to say that.
bro, do you not know this? Hold on. I hope that this will, if you're listening, this will not do anything for you. But if you're watching on YouTube, and most of you guys have seen this,
There you go. See? Exactly.
so on those 15-ish, whatever times I've been at that concert, I've been on stage with Rob every time
Yeah.
for the, so yeah, absolutely. I'm with you. That was gonna be my barometer. Where are you at Vanilla Ice? Because that tells me this interview is over, or oh yeah, we can continue going. Where are you at 1 to 10, 10 being the greatest musical artist in the
Rob
whole
Van Winkle, right? How many people
100%,
not
baby.
in high school in the 90s know his real name?
Where's he at? 1 through 10. 10 being the greatest artist ever, one being terrible. Where do you put
Oh,
Vanilla
man.
Ice?
I don't know. I mean, if the song comes on, I'm going to listen to it.
Okay, that's good enough. As long as you don't say, well, yeah, if the song comes on, who cares? Yeah, okay.
If it's on our playlist to practice and the kids skip it, I'm going to be like, what are you
Yeah,
doing skipping the good songs?
100%, absolutely. That you're a great coach just for that alone, Mason. That's all I need to hear. I don't care about your technique and motivational skills. You
Fair,
that's perfect right there. I love
fair.
that. Okay, love that. So where does does it happen in college? Where does, because spoiler, you don't go to stocks and bonds, at least you're not today. Maybe you did right out of college. We'll find that out. Where does and how does track and field coaching become like, oh, wait a minute, maybe that's what I can be as a profession?
Oh, man. Great question. And I've thought about that a few times, and I don't. The conversation that comes to my mind, it might be that moment, but as I tell the conversation, I realize I must have thought about it before that
Hmm.
moment,
Hmm.
or so I don't know.
Hmm.
The short answer is I don't know when or
Hmm.
how or why it became a thing. Um, so I'll have to actually hold off on that conversation for a minute because there's moments before that.
As you're thinking about that, Mason, yeah,
Yeah,
I love the way like I'm watching you think through this process. I think when I ask that question, because there's other similar type questions where people think it's like a light switch. It's like, oh yeah, you know what? June 1st, 2000, my coach told me to lead the warm up. Click. I knew I was going to be a track coach. I actually think for most of us, for most of our different kinds of careers too, but for coaching, I think it's more of like that slider button on your light. So instead of a light switch on and off, it's like, oh, first there was no thought, so it was completely off. And then it was like, oh, some people, it's amazing to me and weirdly amazing, even though it's happened to be in front of my life as well. Even though we're in track and field, which means we have coaches. You had a middle school coach, you had a high school coach, you have college coaches. A lot of us don't even realize that, oh, that's a profession. That dude or dudette in front of me is getting paid. Like I just thought they just like track and field and like coaching it. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe that means I could be that. So I think as you're thinking that through, it's actually a slider button
yeah.
to it. Like
I,
little things happen. So
I tell recruits and parents all the time that, especially if they're undecided on their major, that as an 18-year-old, there's only so many things you know of for jobs, right?
yeah, it's
Doctor, lawyer, nurse,
ridiculous. Yeah.
teacher,
Yep. Yep.
fireman, right? There's only so many things you know of. And then you get to college and you find out, oh, this is a thing. Oh yeah, that's what I want to do.
Right.
Or if you're 30 years old, you're like, wait a minute, I can do that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think, this the slider moment when it went from 0 to 1. I'd gotten laid off from my job. I worked in retirement planning for 4 years.
Oh, hold on. So not in college.
Mm-mm.
So in college, you're just doing your athlete thing and doing your
Yeah,
finance thing.
yeah, yeah,
Wow. Not at all
yeah,
in college. No, like, you know what? Guthrie is, because I mean, I know Guthrie. He's an amazing
yeah,
dude. No, like,
yeah.
man, that guy's pretty, he looks like he has a good life. Maybe none of that at all.
No,
Not
no,
even because you had the experience of UW lacrosse kids coming to coach you a little bit in high school. Did you do any of that?
no. The only thing I ever thought, like I said, was maybe someday, if I had kids in high school, I'd maybe, help coach the high school team.
You didn't
Um,
coach a camp during undergrad yet.
I mean,
Really?
I was there. Guthrie had Lauren Seagrave come to do a camp
Awesome.
summer after freshman year, and I was there for that. But I don't remember coaching. I just remember being there. Um,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
So no, the moment that it went, yeah. So out of college, I worked at a retirement planning place in the summer, and that was able to turn into a full time. I graduated on a Sunday and started full time on Monday. So I worked in retirement planning for 4 years, and
During that 4 years, where is not coaching? But you're
where's track?
I'm slowly interrupting you to telling the story. Where is track? Yeah, are you still?
Yeah.
Are you watching the Olympics? Are you trying to catch track on TV at all? Are you paying attention to your high school team or your college team? Where's track in that 4 years
Yeah,
for you?
so although I graduated, I didn't want to be done running. I said I love hurdling, and so I trained myself for another year and a half, indoor, outdoor, indoor.
Wow.
So for a year and a half, and my goal was to make the Olympic trials.
Well,
So
okay,
I'd work from
I lied and said I never asked people PRs. What was your PR out of college?
well, I ran 14:35 at lacrosse, and then 14:28 the next year.
What made don't take this in because
Yeah, what made me think I could make
yeah,
Olympic
thank you.
trials?
Yeah, I hate ask. Thank you for asking that question for me. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
What
I
made?
think I
Yeah.
think yeah. So I don't know if it was the U.S. Championships or the Olympic trials, but the year I looked at it, it was like 1380, and I'm like, okay, that's the goal. Let's run 1380.
That's fair.
And I was injured a lot in college, and so
Hmm.
I felt like there was more in the tank.
Hmm.
And so yeah, so I worked 8 to 5 or 8 to 4:30, and I'd get to the track as UWL's guys were getting done. And so I just would train on my own. I was able to get in. Nothing was going on in the field house in the winter, so I'd there on my own and work.
You're in town working that job. Yeah.
Yep, yep,
I don't fault like that's not an uncommon story. A 14-3 kid or a 10-20 kid in the 100 goes, I wanted to try to make the trial. And it's like, bro, you're not even in track world. We know it's like, man, you're not even close here. But I support that. It's just like I support a college football player that says, "Hey, I'm gonna go try the AFL or the Canadian League because I want to try out. My dream is the NFL." It's like, if you don't do it now as a 22-ish year old, you certainly ain't gonna do it as a 32-year old. But you know what you can do as a 32-year old? You can go into retirement planning as a 32-year old.
yeah,
You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? So so when I say that, it was more like, oh my God, did you run like 13-8, 13-7? Like, bro, that's amazing.
No, so
That's
well,
interesting.
I think the other part is, like I said, I loved it so much. So,
Mm,
like when my athletes, I have sprinter, jumper, hurdlers, when they graduate, they get into marathon running. It's like, well, why in
yeah,
the world?
those
Because
guys,
they want to be
there's
competitive at something.
yeah,
They've been competitive forever, and this is something they can be competitive. And so
yeah.
for me, I was still able to do it.
And it's hard
And
to be a post collegiate sprinter, hurdler, jumper if you're not elite, sub elite. Yeah, there's no
yeah,
like I can go do a marathon every weekend in the country. Where
yeah.
in the world would a guy like me do a 100-meter dash?
Yeah.
Right.
So I just knew I loved it, and UWL hosts a few home meets every year, so I ran one or two indoor meets and a couple of outdoor meets. But I love training so much that it was just as much about getting out and training and hurdling and practice as it was competing.
Did you
And
become
so
a nerd with track? Like, so now do you know who all the great? No, still not.
I want to be. I try to be. I just don't
Yeah,
have
yeah, yeah.
time.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
and we only have a women's team. I don't coach men, so half the time I forget the men's track is
No,
even a
no,
thing.
I'm
So
sorry. Stay in that time period. During college
yeah,
and this 4 years, did you
yeah.
become like I knew who the Olympic champ was and all that kind of stuff?
No, that was what I was gonna say is now I know a lot more.
Oh, yeah.
but it's only because I coach women, and so I pay attention to the women at the elite level, what they're
Right.
doing, and
Right.
or athletes that I know, that were in our conference or whatever that have gone on to big things or
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so no, I don't know that I was particularly a track fan.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just loved to train and wanted to compete, and so you have to have a goal out there, right? Who wants to train with no goal,
Right.
And so the goal was Olympic trials. I always tell my athletes those outcome goals are what motivate you to do the hard things. And so
Mm-hmm.
that was the outcome that I was working towards that got me to work hard in the weight room or whatever. And so I would just go train and while I was working the job and so 4 years later, I got laid off in June, I think it was, and so I was unemployed a little bit. At that point in time, I thought I might want to be a high school teacher. So I thought, it was fine that I got laid off. I didn't really want to be in that job anymore anyway, and I
Mm-hmm.
thought let's maybe pursue teaching. And so that next fall, I was substitute teaching where I went to high school, and they get out really early in the afternoon. They're done at like 2:30. And I was like, well, shoot, that's early enough. Maybe, I could go coach. I don't know why I thought that. So I called up Guthrie. I was like, hey, can I come by and help coach the hurdles? And he's like, yeah, come on over. So I came and
Why
coached the guys.
why Guthrie at UW lacrosse and not at your high school?
Because high school doesn't happen in the fall and the winter.
Oh, okay, so this is fall.
Yeah,
So
this
it's
is
like, oh, I
fall.
want to coach. I know Guthrie's doing it. We don't do this until March or April here. Okay, okay, got it, got it.
Yeah, I suppose maybe that's why. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, I'm always
Um,
curious because like when I got into coaching, so I played football and ran track, and when I was in college, there was a high school like literally right out my fraternity house doors, windows, fraternity houses windows, and I remember calling up the high school track coach, and that changed my life. That got me into coaching. And sometimes I think, why didn't I call the football coach? And I could be a $1 million coordinator right now. I have no idea. I also could be have a heart attack and died by now too. But if I'd have gone that other
yeah,
route. But so I'm just curious. Like that to me was again a fork. Maybe the left side wasn't even existent because there's no fall practice. But you
yeah,
could have called the football coach in high school and been like, hey, I played receiver.
yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. So called Guthrie, and he said, "Yeah, come on over." So I started working with the guys, and then I realized the women's coach, who wasn't really a hurdle guy, was working with the women hurdlers. And so I asked him, I'm like, "Hey, you want me to
Separate
come?"
programs.
Yeah, yep,
Yeah.
yep. Pat Healy
Still
was the
today.
women's
Yeah. Yeah.
coach.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And yeah, so started working with the women. Like I don't know, guys was Monday, Wednesdays. The ladies were Tuesday, Thursdays, and then come January, my boss was like, "Hey, economy's better, things are picking up. We can bring you back."
The
I'm like,
retirement
"Cool,
boss, the retirement planning boss.
yeah, yeah." And so in the meantime, I realized I didn't want to be a teacher. I enjoyed
Oh.
to teaching. I was fine,
Mhm.
and um, just realized that wasn't what I wanted to do. And so he asked if I wanted to come back. I said, "Yeah, but I'm really liking coaching. Can I leave early in the day to keep coaching?" He goes, "Yeah, cool, no problem." So that was awesome. So I went back to work. I was making money again, and got to keep coaching. And so that season progresses, and season gets over, and going through the summer, and um, Coach Healy, the women's coach, and I, for whatever reason, had butted heads on some things. I don't recall what it was. I don't remember what
Mhm.
happened. But that August, uh, just kind of wanted to go and talk to him and just kind of apologize for whatever my part was in that and see if he wanted me to coach again. And so walking down the hallway, it's August, no one's around, right? It's still summertime.
Mm.
And so I walked down the hallway to his office and opened the door and he goes, before I even sit down, he goes, "Hey, Mason, Winona State needs a track coach. You should apply." And I laughed and I was like, "Oh, that's funny.
Ha ha
I have
ha. Yeah.
a finance degree and no
Right.
experience. They wouldn't hire me." And he's like, "All right, cool, whatever." So we sit down, we talk for an hour, work things out. He worked out the plan for the year, coaching again. And as I leave, he's like, "No, seriously, you should apply Winona State." I'm like, "Yeah, good one." And so
Head or assistant coach?
what at Winona State, the head
Yeah.
coach was open. Yeah,
Why? Yeah. Okay. Why? That is interesting.
yeah,
It's one thing where you are experience wise at this point, but and so maybe you're a leap away from uh, experience enough to become a full-time college. Maybe. We've seen plenty of people who have no experience start college and they become great. you are maybe several steps from becoming a head coach of a four. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
what was that, you think?
Why he said that?
Yeah.
He probably knew Winona State was desperate. I mean,
How far is Winona from this
half
from
half hour.
Okay, so it's also within like, oh, someone doesn't have to relocate, like you could
Yeah.
just go there tomorrow.
Yeah.
Wow, okay. And you
Yeah.
were like,
So
this is crazy.
yeah. Yeah. So
Of course you would. You're a
I'm
smart guy.
walking down the hall, and um, I mean, as I tell the story, basically, I'm going to just tell you it was the hand of God that got me to
Hmm.
this job. There's several things that people might say are a coincidence, and I don't believe that there are coincidences. And
A lot of
so
times you
walking,
spell coincidence, God. I'm with you.
there you go.
Hmm.
And so I'm walking down the hall to get out of the building. Again, no one's in the building, except I walk by this door that's open, and Kim Bloom is there, and she was the head coach at Winona State prior. She's the one that left that the job was open, and she's now the at that point was the assistant athletic director. She was a grad
She
assistant
went from Winona as the head track coach over to
to the
UWL as
assistant athletic director
and
at
that's what opened up
West.
that position. Okay.
Yep.
And
And
you did not know her, I assume,
so
before.
she was a grad assistant at La Crosse my freshman year. So we were aware of each other. I would
Right,
never say I know her, but I knew who she was.
right,
And I
right.
would say she knew who I was, but that was about all. So she's like, "Hey, Mason, Winona State needs a head coach. You should apply." I'm like, "Nah, I don't have any, you're a volunteer. I'm a finance guy. They wouldn't hire me." And she goes, "No, no, I'll call the AD. I'll tell him to interview you." I'm like, "Nah, I appreciate it. I don't want to waste anybody's time."
And she, because of her leaving, is that what opened up the position?
Mhm.
And did she leave like in June or like in meaning like how come they
Yeah,
haven't even filled it by
middle
now?
of the summer.
So
Yeah. So
it's kind of odd they haven't, not when I say odd, meaning like typically you'd want it filled by now, but it's not
yeah,
outside the realm of expectations they hadn't had it
yeah,
filled.
yeah. So Mike Turgeon at Mankato, right?
Yeah, of course.
So he was finishing school at La Crosse at the time, and I think he was in grad school, and so uh, Kim had just hired him as the volunteer throws coach in June or July, and then the next day told him she's leaving, and so
Okay, so Mike's been on the podcast, and I actually do remember that. Yes, because he was like,
yeah,
"Yeah, I was going to be this," and all of a sudden it's like, "Oh no, I'm this." Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So he was volunteer throws coach. We had the distance coach was a professor here, volunteer at the time, and so the end of August comes around, and that's all they had for a staff. So Mike and Neil, the distance coach, had done the eligibility meeting with the staff. So it was practice was scheduled to start. If they didn't hire somebody, the athletic director was going to have to be the
Mhm.
track and field coach. So Kim says, "Yeah, you should. I'll call the AD." I said, "Nah, I appreciate it. I don't want to waste anybody's time." And so I go back to work,
Yeah, because to you,
and
this is crazy talk, right? Like
yeah,
you're realistic on the. You're like, what are you guys talking about?
yeah, yeah. So this is what was it? About a week before Labor Day, and so practice, was scheduled to start, after Labor Day, and whatever whatever it was, tap on the shoulder, and like I said, just the hand of God. The Holy Spirit said, call Kim back. So I called Kim. I said, sure. Call the AD. Sure. So there wasn't really even an application. It was just a matter of somehow, I don't know, email, somehow we get in touch, and he's going to call me on my lunch break at my other job. And so Larry Holstead, the athletic director at the time, calls me up. We talk on my lunch break. He says, "Hey, why don't you come out to Winona? Let's do a proper interview." I said, "I don't want to waste your time. I appreciate it. I'm just a finance guy." He goes, "No, no, no. Like your energy. Why don't you come on up?" I'm like, all right, I guess. And so that was, I don't know, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, a full week before Labor Day. So I come up, and it's literally the other side of the wall behind my camera, is where his office was at the time. And I come in, and we sit and talk in his office for an hour, and just talking track. Never felt like an interview. It wasn't until years later that I realized that was the genius of Larry, was he just needed to know if I knew track.
Mhm.
He had been a high school starter for a long time. He was a high school administrator. His
Oh
kids did
wow.
track. He knew track.
Hmm.
So we just talked track for an hour. And then he's like, "Why don't I show you around campus?" So we walk around campus, introduce me to some coaches, whatever. We get back to his office and sit down. I'm like, "Larry, what's going on here? Like, what's
Yeah, we can be
like,
done. That's not, you're being nice, but I can
yeah."
believe
I'm
now.
like,
Yeah,
"We've been
yeah,
sitting
yeah.
here for an hour and a half. Like, where are we at?"
Yeah.
He goes, "You want the job? It's yours." I'm like, I don't know, because it was an emergency hire. So in the state of Minnesota, you can do an emergency hire,
Okay.
and it lasts for a year. And at that point, you've got to, do a national search. And so I'm like, all right, I'm 26 years old. I have zero experience. If they hire me, I leave my other job. A year from now, I have to apply for this job. If somebody more experienced than me applies, they have to hire that person. So I'm not sure I'm going to take the job.
It's a risk.
And so I go back to work, and I walk in the door, and my boss is like, "Well, what happened?" And he's like, and
The
I said,
boss
"Well,
knew?
yeah, of course, yeah."
You
I
told the
went on my
boss.
yeah, yeah.
You're
He and I
you're
had been
so you're
friends for
so
a long
nice.
time. He was the worship pastor at my church. I play the
Oh, okay, okay,
drums.
okay, okay, okay. All
Yeah,
right.
we'd known each
All
other
right.
for a long
It was
time.
more than just the traditional boss employee
Yeah, yeah,
relation.
yeah.
Okay, 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 okay.
And I'm like, "Well, they offered the job." I'm like, "I don't know." He's like, "What do you mean? You got to take it." He's like, "It's your dream job." And so apparently at some point I had decided I wanted to coach. I
Right,
don't
right,
know.
right, right.
And he's like, "You got to take it." And I'm like, "I don't know." And so I thought about it for the weekend, and Labor Day. I remember it being Labor Day because I called the athletic director, and then after I hung up, I'm like, "Oh, I just totally called him on a vacation day."
Yeah.
Um, so I called him, I'm like, "Hey, yeah, I'll take the job if it's still there." And he goes, "When can you start?" I said, "Well, give me a week to kind of tie up some loose ends at the other job, and I'll be there next Monday." And so I show up that next Monday, and I'm sitting in the office the other side of that wall. And I walk in, there's nothing but a desk and a chair. And early in the day, a girl comes in. Jenny Fagan is her name. She and I happen to be neighbors as children. Um, I mean, I was 26, she was 22, I guess. So we're 4 years apart, right? And so she comes in and says hi. And she's like, "By the way, we have practice today." I was like, "Oh, what time? Where do I meet you?" She's like, 3 o'clock, football field. I'm like, all right, cool. So I go find a notepad and a pen and figure out what we're doing for practice that day. And
Dude,
20 years later, I'm on a podcast talking to you.
Mason, I remember, first of all, I'm a little speechless. And I've done this 350 times. So that's a little hard. And you know me well enough. It's hard just in any time to get me to shut up. I thought when we started this podcast back in 2020, I was like, I know there's a lot of different paths to becoming a coach. High school, college, club, professional. There are many different paths. But I was like, that number is finite though. Like, I couldn't put a number to it. I couldn't say like, there's generally 10 or even 50 paths. I have, somewhere around 150, 200. I learned, oh no, it might be infinite. That is makes I don't know that you could have made if I'd have said, hey, make up a way to become a coach.
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
that you could have made that up.
yeah,
That is absolutely crazy,
yeah,
dude.
yeah.
Here's what I mean when I invite people to the podcast and I tell people your story matters. There are people who will hear that story who have been like, I never thought I could be a coach. There, certainly the majority of our listeners, you guys and gals that are listening right now, are current coaches, whether they're the high school club, college, etc. But I know from social media feedback and emails and stuff that there are a smaller number of just they're track fans and maybe their daughter goes to Winona and that's why they're listening to this one or whatever. But there are people that are listening going, I can't be a track coach. I can't give up my career, whether it's 4 years in or 20 years in. That just doesn't happen. And you're showing that proof that it does happen. There are people that go, I can't coach college. I'm just, and that's one of my hated words. I hate the word just and only. I don't know if we've ever got into it. At nationals when I'm always handing out the gifts, right? And I'll say, oh, how many? Yeah, I know. I saw, but I love that actually. That's really cool. I'll
Yeah.
say, hey, men or women, and they'll say something like, oh, women only. I'm like, well, unless it's like a Winona where it's like, oh, you only have a women's program, but it's like, whoa. That how many people wish they had someone here and they're not. It's not only, or they'll say, yeah, we just got one athlete in. Bro, you know how many have zero? And they would kill for one. It's not just and only. You did it. You have this one athlete or this one program, etc. So, um, So to say for some, like, I was trying to think where my train of thought was, for someone that says I'm only a high school coach. It's like, bro, you know how many people would love to be a high school coach? Don't belittle yourself in their profession. But anyway, that is, I'm still like, I actually kind of don't know where the next way to go with this, because that's just
Well,
crazy. Because
yeah.
there's a little bit, Mason. You're analytical enough to, and I feel like there's a lot good enough self awareness here. Like, that is an audacious story. There's a lot of audacity there, right? And typically audacity is seen as like a negative, like, well, how dare you think you could be a college coach? How dare you think you could go to the trial? You know, those kind of things. How dare you think you could run in college, by the way?
Yeah.
But being open to these things, these coincidences, leads to what, you know, which we're going to get into, these 20 years of what you've done at Winona and the positive impact you made on young people. That's just amazing to me, for you to be open to it. That people are in your lives. Like, did you say Kim was her name? The
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and Healy, to even mention those to you. Because again, there's a little bit of
yeah.
audacity. It's like, why would you mention that to him? Like, what are you
Yeah.
talking about? You know,
Yeah.
this is amazing.
Well, so the one thing I'll say, I always say I was the least qualified, coach in Division II when I started.
Most people
But
say that and they're being fake humble. You're being dead on, by the
yeah,
way.
for sure. I mean, not a lot of 26-year-old head coaches, and with as little experience as I had. But I will say that I have a PhD in track and field because Mark Guthrie is one of the
Certainly
absolute greatest of all time, and
correct.
how to run a program, how to treat people. I learned from the absolute best,
It's a
and I
great
think
point.
if you go out and you'll see, there's a lot of other head coaches out there that Andy Basler at Milwaukee and Andrew
Mhm.
Rock up at Bethel and Danny
That's right.
Tutsky at John Carroll and
Wow, is that right?
Sturgeon over at Mankato and
Hmm.
Chip Schneider didn't run for Guthrie, but he was a GA up at Eau Claire.
Hmm.
He's at Eau Claire and just a lot and all kinds of assistant coaches that are Guthrie guys, as I like to say, and then you try to count how many of Guthrie's guys are high school coaches, and you're never going to be able to find out.
Yeah,
I mean, I go to the state meet every year, and it's like a reunion of old teammates and other lacrosse guys, and so it's just um, you know, I don't know that he understands the impact that he's had, not just on the guys he's coached, but then
yeah,
everybody I've coached and now people I've coached are coaches.
that's right.
And so, anything they learned from me, it's because I learned it from Guthrie.
Yep.
And so while I do say in terms of experience, I had very little, I truly, I say this often that I have a PhD in track and field from,
Yeah.
being an athlete with Mark Guthrie.
I'm with you 100%. In fact, you stole a part of my brain there. That's exactly what I think about, and that's part of the one of the reasons why we started this podcast, was to uplift and honor what you do. Because first of all, the positive impact that you make on young people is immeasurable. 99% of the kids that you coach are not going to go on to become pros, but 100% of them are going to go on to become moms, dads, husbands, wives, business owners, accountants, etc. And that's the real impact that you make. On the track and field side, you're exactly right. First of all, you stand on the shoulders of other giants, Guthrie specifically here in this example, and you're building that same thing. There are coaches that are on your shoulders now. They go, yeah, you know what? I learned from Mason. Like, I got to watch what he did, and or he encouraged me to become a coach and a teacher, or what, like that. That's exactly right. I love the trees, and Guthrie certainly has a bigger tree than most out there, and he gets credit for the impact that you make on your young people. You know, it's a there's enough credit to share, and Guthrie certainly
One
deserves that.
and then one thing I don't want to skip before we move on to anything else.
Mhm.
One name I haven't mentioned, Darren Shepardson. Shep was my high school coach my junior and senior year, and
Mm.
that again I talked about Sam Service, my middle school coach, really setting the trajectory of my life. Shep was another one coming in my junior
Yeah.
year, and again just really made a massive impact
Did
on my life.
did you call those guys? So when you're officially the head coach, and certainly there seems like, first day you're like, oh, what time's practice? What do we do? Okay, I got to figure that out too. So it's certainly there's a week or so of just, you're just trying to manage the chaos, because I'm say you're coming in unprepared, meaning you didn't even have a week to like prepare what's first practice going to be like and things like that. But did you call like Shepard and oh my gosh, the middle school
Sam,
coach
yeah, Sam
Sam?
Service.
Like, did you call those guys within the first week or month and be like, hey, you're never gonna believe this?
I don't know if I
Mhm.
did. I mean, obviously at some point they found out. I don't
Right,
know that I
right,
called them.
yeah.
But no, I've certainly wrote a letter to Coach Service a while back, just so
Oh,
he understands the impact that he had. Shep, I can't count the number of times I've told him
good.
the impact that he's had, and he's actually our head cross country coach now as of a couple months ago. I've
Shut
been wanting
up.
for he's finally retiring from teaching, and so he's anyway. So I've been wanting him to be our distance coach
Wow.
for 20 years, and he finally is. So now I get to work with him on a daily basis, and he's an all time great
It's
too. And
one
yeah, so and
it's
so
one thing
I've
to it's one thing to hire a former athlete. To hire a former coach of yours, that's pretty rare. That's actually it's kind of special actually. It's like, dude, this
it
guy
is.
affected my life. Now he's going to be on my staff. We're going to do it together. That's really
Yeah.
neat.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So he just started in January, so it's been a pretty awesome couple of months. And yeah, and so I've let him know countless times, and I think I've let Guthrie know too. I've got a half drafted letter to Guthrie that I need to finish one of these days. Just to, kind of
Okay.
what we talked about now, just the impact
I'm
that
gl
he's had, not just on me, but on so many others.
I'm glad you said that because one of my challenges, very common in our episodes, is someone will talk about a chef and be like, "Oh, impacted my life so much, so much," and I'm like, "Hey, when's the last time, if ever, you've told them that?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's been a while." I was like, "All right, that's my challenge. Go, whether it's write a letter, write an email, call in person. I don't care. That does the mode doesn't matter to me. The actions." So I love that you did it because you were saying that, and I was like, "Oh crap, I can't challenge him to that." Finish
that
out the Guthrie letter, then. That's the challenge there.
I need to finish.
Um, okay. You get this job that you are not qualified for, my friend, and you know that, and I appreciate your self-awareness there. And you said that you have a PhD in track and field, and I don't have pushback on that because of the a very central part of your life that coach you had there, Coach Guthrie. That makes a lot of sense because he's a coach's coach. I know he's a track coach, but he's a coach's coach, so that makes a lot of sense to me. However, there is theoretical. And then there's application, right? I can be a genius on a certain topic, but if I haven't applied that, there's experience to be gained. What, looking back now, because now you have the 2020, you have hindsight, and you're 20 years in the game, you've got a routine, you're probably still challenging yourself to get better, but you know what you're going to do on the first day of practice every day now, right? You're not hours away going, oh crap, all right, I guess we better do this. Looking back, what were like, because someone right now is either literally today or very, very soon going to get their first head coaching job and they know nothing. They know how to coach. Maybe they've been an assistant coach for decades. I don't know. But being a head coach is different. There's so much more going on. I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. Looking back, what are the top three things that you had to figure out, learn really quick? And that doesn't mean necessarily like, oh, I had to figure out how to run practice. Maybe that is one of them. I don't know. Maybe it's I had to figure out how to report to my AD, the person that was in charge of me. I had to figure out how to tell them how the budget was working, or I had to learn how to do a budget. I don't know, scheduling. Again, there's a billion things that you do that you had no clue how to do, that you'd never done, I should say. Think about what are the top three things someone wants to be a head coach or tomorrow's their first day of head coaching. Let's leverage your experience here. What are three things like, man, you know what I had to figure out? Life got easier when I figured out these three things.
Well, man,
I
well,
know.
first thing you got to know about me is I'm a verbal processor,
Okay.
and so I sort of figure things out as I talk.
Yep.
As
Perfect.
you're saying that and examples you're giving, man, I'm not sure. You know, I so
Let me ask.
they say
Keep
they
keep
say
keep thinking. I'm gonna ask in a different way, but I'm kind of stalling for you a little bit so you can think and then talk it out. Maybe it's as you look back now. Thank God I learned these three things. My life is easier today in 2026 because I'm good at X, Y, and Z, which I was not very good at 21 years ago when I started. Maybe that's another way of asking that.
so. Yeah, so a couple of things. Um, First, they say there's glass half full and glass half empty people. I'm
Mhm.
a glass totally full person,
Okay.
and I generally see the best in people or think the best of situations. And also, the very first thing I said, or at least thought to myself when I got the job, I probably told this to Larry: do the best you can with what you got,
Okay.
and whether that's facilities, whether that's money, whether that's staff, whether that's in knowledge, whether that's whatever you got,
Mhm.
however little or much it is, do the best you can with it. And so I don't know if there's this learning moment, right? You talked about scheduling, right?
Yeah.
Well, all you can do is what you know,
Yeah.
right? I was a Wisconsin guy. All the meets I went to in college were at UW Point, Whitewater, Oshkosh,
Hmm.
whatever, Eau Claire. So when I get the job and it's time to set a schedule, all right, well, where did they go last year? All right, here's where they went last year. All right, what other meets do I know of? All right, let's make some calls, let's send some emails. I don't know that you learn how to schedule. You
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
figure it out, right?
Hmm.
You take what you know.
Okay, yes and no. And what I mean by that is, like, I'd rather the attitude be like, all right, well, what did we do last year? And I can improve upon that versus, well, we're going to throw it out and I'm going to put my fingerprint on that. I think
Yeah,
that can be a mistake. But I'm willing to bet, you tell me that I'm wrong here. That's okay. That what your schedule was 21 years ago is different today. There's probably a lot of similarities. Maybe as an alum, you always go to UW Lacrosse, but
yeah,
you've evolved
absolutely,
that schedule.
absolutely. Yep.
How did you tell us about that mindset then of how you evolved your schedule? And it'll be very specific to you, obviously someone who's
Yeah,
in South Carolina, but
yeah,
there's themes that you've improved on it
yeah.
upon it.
No, I think there's two things. I think there's the making sure you're getting your team into the right level of meet. Whatever kind of team you have, right? If you're the worst team in your conference and you're not scoring any points, you need to go to meets where those athletes can be competitive. You don't want to go to meets every week where you're last in everything, right? And so as the team gets better, or whatever level of meet you need to be in. And at the same time, I do want to go to some meets where we'll be one of the better teams so we can gain some confidence. But I also want to go to some meets where we get our butts kicked so we can be challenged, right? So
Hmm.
finding the right kinds of meets, and then the other thing is networking. Who do you know?
Hmm.
And as you get to know more people, um, you'll adapt, right? And
Hmm.
so I didn't know anyone in Division two, and now I know lots of people in Division two.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so you might be thinking, all right, well, hey, Northwest Missouri has a meet this weekend. I'll give them a call,
Hmm.
or whatever. You know people, and so you call them. So
Hmm.
networking is one thing that all my professors in college said is important, and I didn't believe them. Um,
Really?
Oh yeah, I was like, no, the best person gets the job, and I've learned that that's not true. I tell my athletes, I said, you can't be a turd. First of all, you have to be good and you have to work hard, but knowing somebody sure helps. Because if you're trying to buy a product on Amazon and you're not sure which one to buy, you'll read a thousand reviews
Hmm.
and still not be sure which one you want to buy.
Hmm.
But if your neighbor or the guy in the next office says, dude, I just bought this ABC product. It's awesome. Well, that's the one I'm going to buy because someone I know said that.
Even if the
And
reviews
so
are a little bit lower, if it's a 4 point versus a 4.9, it's like, yeah, but my neighbor bought it and
that's
I
all I
trust
need.
my neighbor.
That's all I need.
Yeah.
And so,
That's
and
a really good
employment,
analogy. No one's ever used that kind of analogy. That was a really good analogy.
and employment is the same way. If there's 100 people that applied for a job and you're just one of 100 resumes in that stack,
Hmm.
but the hiring authority, the athletic director, if I know the athletic director and I call him and say, hey, this dude, you got to hire this guy. He's going to go to the top of the pile. He might not get hired,
That's
but
right.
he's going to go to the top of the pile and he's going to get a serious look.
That's a
And
good point.
so I've learned, networking is important.
So
And
networking is a topic of interest to me because I think most people do it wrong.
okay,
What does that mean to you? What is
that's a great
networking?
question. I don't know that I ever thought about defining it. I think so. It's the network of people that you know, but just knowing them isn't what matters. It's what they think of you.
Hmm.
So I think there have been people in my life who maybe, I can think of one person in particular, and I'm not going to give details because it is a good relationship, but somebody 20 years ago, professionally that I met, that I don't know that we had a good relationship, but we respected each other and we worked together.
Hmm.
And as time went on, he's become a very important um, person that it's important that he and I respect each other,
Hmm.
because there are things I need from him that if he didn't like me, he wouldn't have to give them to me.
Right.
And so, whatever your reason for being nice to somebody, it may be self-serving,
Hmm.
but the network of people isn't important if they don't like you.
Yeah.
So having a good rapport with people matters.
Hmm.
And so again, whether it's self-serving or not, I mean, I hope that I'm not being self-serving when I meet somebody. I genuinely think the best of them. Like I said, I'm a glass totally full person.
Right,
I
right.
think the best of someone until they give me a reason not to. And even then, I think, well, they probably had a good reason for not being very nice, right?
Sure.
And that's just the attitude I
They're
take. And
awesome.
so, when I meet people, I think the best of them, and I want to have a good rapport with them. And come on, all of us want to be liked, right? Nobody wants to be disliked. And so I think when I go into a relationship, I want to treat people well, and I want to be treated well by them too. So to me, it's the network of people and again, it's whether it's helping someone else get a job or whether it's, hey, I know the guy, like if we've got an athlete who wants to be a grad assistant,
Hmm.
well, let me know. I know people everywhere. If you
Right.
want to be in this part of the country, I probably know a coach there.
Hmm.
And, let me give them a call for you. Those kind of things.
I think the self-serving part is one of the things that I have a problem with most people networking. Most people, and I always like to use the convention as my example. They want to go to convention because they want to find Mouse, a good friend of mine, Gill Podcast alum. So I always like using him as my example. They want to find Mouse because they want to find some way to curry favor with Mouse so he'll be on their resume. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
that's not networking. That's using someone. You're not giving any value to them at all. Uh, and the other component that I think people forget about with networking is the component of time. You had said earlier, I think, it takes time for a
Yeah.
relationship because networking, you could just, a math equation, network equals relationship.
Yeah.
That takes time. You don't meet someone for the very first time and automatically it's like, oh man, I trust them with my kids. Like, no, there takes experiences back and
No.
forth, etc.
Yeah, and the thing that I don't think you talk about what have I learned along the way. I think the thing that I didn't realize was so valuable before I did it was going to the coaches convention and being involved in like committees.
Mm,
So most of the coaches that I would say I'm friends with or closest with are guys that I was on a committee with, and we worked on, hey, we want to propose this. How do we
right,
do that? And
right.
we worked on a proposal together, like Steve Blocker from Emporia. He and I
Hmm.
met on a committee, or Damon Martin, at Adams State. I
Yeah,
wouldn't
great
know
guy.
him except from going to convention
Right,
and being on a committee together, right? Or Jerry Baltus. Why would I know Jerry at Grand
right.
Valley except meeting him at convention and having conversations and so I think camaraderie. Oftentimes people say camaraderie is built shoulder to shoulder, right? You
Mm,
worked on a project together,
yeah, shared
and so I think
experiences. Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
shared experiences. So I think a lot of coaches that I do have good camaraderie with, it's we worked on a project together at a convention or whatever, or we wanted to they wanted to put a meet on and I wanted to go to that meet. So we worked on promoting that meet together
Right,
or
right. Hmm.
whatever it might be. So and so you kind of get to know people that way. Or you competed, right? You had a good 4x4 and this other coach, they had a good 4x4 and your athletes did battle and you sort of stood next to each other taking splits, right?
Yeah,
Or you're a
yeah,
jumps coach and your kid's battling their kid and you sit there and chat in between jumps and you become friends because your athletes competed against each other.
yeah.
I think that's the case often too.
So I love the development of your scheduling of like, oh, the right meets at the right time, not just I'm going to go full bore and we're only going to be at meets where we're going to win and we are last in conference because we're not getting stretched. But also the other side of the extreme is we're going to only go to the big meets. I don't care if we're dead last. That's going to make us tougher. You're almost a tweener there of like, hey, there's times where we need to be confidence builders, so we need to be maybe a better team at that meet. And there's other times where it's like, yeah, we got to put you in the meat grinder here a little bit. You got to realize you're not as good as maybe you think. Sometimes it's a mentality. It's like, oh, you are ninth. You're not second in this.
Yeah.
So what do we do to become second then? I love that development of scheduling. I love that discussion about networking and what that means to you and what it's done to your career. Is there a third thing you can think of? Again, think about when you first started and you're like, oh my God, I had no idea about X. And now thank God I do because that has made coaching life a lot easier.
I don't know how to express this. You talked about how being a head coach is different than being an assistant coach. And I think it's just a matter of there's a lot of balls in the air that you have to manage, whether it's budget, scheduling, staffing, recruiting, and then just all the emotions that go along with having a team full of 18 to 22 year olds, all of the things that they're going on in their lives, and so I don't like to use the word culture because it's so, what does it mean to different people? It's so cliche, right? Like, I don't like cliches. I
Yeah.
like things that
Yeah.
are
It's
stand
hard.
the
It's
test of
hard to
time.
hold on to culture. It's like this big
Yeah.
glob of glue. It's like, how am I
Yeah.
really? Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I try not to use that word, but I have to bring it up so you know what I'm talking about. But
Hmm.
it's just a matter of people. I think the reason I bring it up is people ask, what do you do to create culture?
Hmm.
And I think, and I have this written down somewhere, so I'm not going to say it as well as I wrote it down once, but just the idea that it's just what you do on a daily basis, and so I guess I'm not sure what I'm getting at with this, but just the idea of shoot, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Um, I don't know. I guess I shouldn't have gone down that road. I'm not
No,
sure
no,
what I'm trying to say. Just
I appreciate you having a little bit of pause and stammer there, if you will, because I think you're right. I think a lot of times we say culture as if we know exactly what that means, how it's built, how it's destroyed, by the way, how we change it. It's very, I don't like to use the word cliche, but it is very cliche to say, "Oh, when took over the program, I wanted to instill my culture." It's like, well, what does that mean?
yeah,
And by
yeah.
the way, what is, we're all, I think, to something you said earlier about like we all want to be liked, and I do think some people like to be the bad guy, though. I think that some people have that kind of. It's rare, though. It's rare. I think most of us would prefer to be liked versus hated on. Um, but you saying, general, you, not you, Mason. I
Mhm.
wanted to instill my culture versus the last guy or gal. It's like, well, what do you think the last guy or gal culture was? You think they were like, oh, you know what my culture is going to be? We piss on everybody. We don't like our team. No, they probably had a positive culture that they were trying to install as
So
well.
yeah, so let me jump in. I guess it's just you you are who you are, whether you try to be or not. You are that person, and I guess I want to make sure that I'm treating people well, that I'm respecting people, and being the best coach I can be for them. And then the culture is just the people on your team, whoever they are and however they act is your culture. And you can have things on the wall and that you're trying to grind into your team and these slogans and whatever. And that's fine. Most of the time, people don't remember them or they don't really grab onto what they are. But I think just as a coach, just recognizing how much your athletes reflect, and give you two examples. I don't swear. I just don't. And I don't tell people that I don't swear, that they just never hear me swear. And so my athletes generally don't swear around me. But every once in a while, I'll hear them off somewhere else talking to each other. And they're cussing whatever to each other. I'm like, oh, I never hear them. And so again, they're sort of adapting to who you are as a coach. And I think
Mhm.
the earliest example I have of that is maybe my first year, but one of my first years coaching, we're at this meet. And which one happened first? The athlete, this pole vaulter, she just absolutely just a baby, just screaming and crying and shouting and yelling and swearing and anything goes wrong. She misses a bar, she doesn't plant. What just I'm like, whoa, what is going on here? A few minutes later, I see her coach acting the same way. I'm like, oh, well, that makes a ton of sense. And so, or another example, when a coach is freaking out about, well, why are we throwing the javelin this way? We should be throwing it. There's two runways. We should be throwing it that way. And their athletes hear him say that. Well, it was decided that we're throwing the javelin the opposite way the coach wants to, but all of his athletes heard the coach say, well, you can't throw it that far into the wind or with the wind or whatever the discussion was. All of those athletes, they were supposed to be like 1, 2, 3 in the conference. They were like 8, 9, 10.
Yeah,
The athletes immediately were like, oh, well, coach says we can't throw far this way.
yeah,
Everybody else, they're just fine that way,
yeah.
but they latched on to what the coach said and did and his attitude. And so I think they feed off of that, whether they
Yeah.
know it or not, and whether they'll admit it or not. They're going to feed off of the coach's attitudes.
What do you do with your non-cursing? If if an athlete curses at your practice, one of your athletes practices at curses, do you correct them or
No,
you
they
just
can
lead
be
by
who
example?
they can be who they want to be. I'm not
Yeah,
going to tell them they can't be a certain kind of person.
I think maybe another way of defining there's a billion ways to define culture, but one of those is what do you portray? How do you so leadership, what do you so you don't cuss. So people would never be able to say, "Oh, yeah, you know why we cuss at practice? Because coach does, right?" No, coach does not. So probably most of them don't because they do consciously or subconsciously recognize, well, I've actually never heard coach cuss or anything, right? So what do you portray? What is your leadership? And then also what do you accept? out there as well. If it's like, my kids curse all the
Yeah,
time, and it's like, well, do
I
you
won't.
accept that or
Yeah,
not? Yeah.
I won't accept disrespect.
Right,
Um,
right, right, right. Yeah, 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 yeah.
that sort of thing.
And then I'm reminded of that example you gave about the javelins. So just recently at the Wisconsin track coaches clinic, Lance Brahman, coach of Noah Lyles, recent world indoor 60-meter champ. Oh God, what's that kid's name? Richardson? Oh my gosh. What is Anthony Richardson? He went to Arkansas. He just won the indoor 60. He's a Lance kid. And I've known Lance, I've coached against Lance. I've known Lance for a long time. His dad has been on the podcast. I've made fun of Lance a little bit. I was like, your dad has been on the podcast, but not you, Lance. But anyway, Lance Brahman, big time, he's coaching Noah and all these guys, right? And so he was doing some talks at Wisconsin, and he made a big point about whatever I'm thinking or feeling that's negative, I have to stay inside. My athlete cannot see me. He gave an example, I think, of maybe a false start that happened in one of Noah's races. I could be getting the example wrong. But it's like a false start or something happened. He was like, oh, crap, that's not good because of whatever other reasons. He goes, but I stood in that stand confident. It's like, yep, all right, get back in the blocks. He goes, I couldn't let my athletes see that I was like, crap, that's not good because of whatever reason, blah, blah, blah. He goes, because then the athlete starts thinking, oh, crap, that's not very good. It sucks. It's a false start. And and like he repeated that kind of that similar story. He did 3 talks and almost every one of his talks. And it really stuck out to me like, oh, that's right. I think every coach would say or admit our athletes feed off of us, but then we forget that and then don't act that way. And so we complain about, oh, it's
No,
the wind is in our face. I'm thinking you pole vaulter and coaches.
yeah,
Oh, we didn't turn the 100 meters around, or oh, we don't have the right pacer for the 10K. I don't know. I don't like talking
yep.
to
No, we
no,
talk about all that.
but
Just
we
go through.
say that in front of
Mhm.
our kids. So what do you think they're thinking then? You're
Yeah,
the leader. Of course they're
yeah.
looking at you.
No, there was. I remember very vividly. There was an indoor conference meet, and as an athlete, you warm up, you get amped up, you do your event, and then you're done. And then sure, you're cheering for your team, whatever, but you're not on all day, right? You can turn off for a lot of the day. But when you're the head coach,
Not the coach. Yeah.
not only when my events are competing, but I'm involved in watching the jumpers and everything else that's going on, and worrying about, is there enough food and where are we going to eat later, and just you're never off, right? So you get
Right.
through a 2-day conference meet, and man, I don't realize until the 4x4 is done, but then all of a sudden you're just wiped out, right? So we get done to the meet. I don't Doesn't matter what we placed, if we were second, third, whatever, if we didn't win. And I found there's just a somewhere, I don't know, plyo box, I don't know, something I sat on. And one of my athletes, and I was just like, just tired. One of my athletes like, Coach, are you upset? Are you disappointed in us? I'm like, and all she saw was just my facial expression. I was like, no, I'm so proud of you guys.
Right.
This weekend was amazing. You guys did great, whatever, all this stuff. And she's like, oh, you just look mad. And that was a real like, okay, no matter.
Yeah.
I mean, I was tired and whatever, but I was still proud of them and excited and everything. But
Yeah.
my face didn't show it,
Yeah.
right? And so I'm aware of that, and
Yeah.
I don't. I'm sure I don't always do that perfectly. I'm sure when the meet's done and I'm tired, I look tired.
I'm
But it,
with
it was just more evidence of that they see you, and they
100%.
feed off of you.
I'm with you. They are always watching, and everybody is always watching. Whether you're the head coach, assistant coach, athlete, they're always watching. Uh, my, where I sit in my seat, my role is to uplift and honor track and field coaches, to be your cheerleader, to be your advocate. Mason, I think what you're describing there, I'm with you 100%. But you do need that outlet, that emotional, like where no one is watching me. So, just thinking about mental health, and I know you probably have worked on these things, but we can always get better. Whether it's back at the house or the car ride home, be who you be tired. It's okay to be tired. It's impossible to be the stand up. I'm always, on 24/7. There are certain times you've got to be on, but there's times where you've got to regenerate. You've got to be off as well. So just kind of my not counsel to you, but my advice to you. Where does the role of coaching education fall for you? And
Mm,
typically, I talk about coaching education in a formal and informal setting. Formal being the things of like USATF level ones, level twos, USTFCA, Altus, etc. Informal being more like, oh yeah, I was on the phone with Coach Guthrie for hours talking about 400-meter training or whatever.
yeah,
What's the
yeah,
role of coaching education been for your career?
yeah. Everything you just said. Yeah, I did the USTF CCCA, the sprint deep dive one that they did. That was I don't know, 12, 13 years ago, and learned a ton. Schexnayder was there, Vince Anderson. I say all the time, it's stuff that I learned from Vince. I mean, I use that daily. And I still try to catch when he has stuff on, Twitter or wherever he has got stuff posted. Learned a ton from him, a lot of, just a lot of stuff that maybe coaching philosophy wise that maybe I didn't realize was so important, or whatever, just so many things I learned from Vince. So the USTF CCCA, that all inclusive one, was hugely impactful for me in a lot of ways. And I did the Altus, what do they call it? Mentorship. They do it different now than they did 5 years ago. But
Yeah, the old
Dan Paff,
ACP, the apprentice coaching
yeah, no, it was just
program.
it was all via Zoom,
Yeah.
and there's about a dozen or 20 people that you got to do like a um, apprenticeship sort of program. Anyway, with Coach Paff,
Mhm.
and so just learned absolute ton from Dan Paff throughout that, and the others on the call. There's a phrase that a British guy used. I think it's Tom Tomlinson. His name. He's a rugby strength and conditioning guy in England. Anyways, he used the phrase "fit for purpose." And because we talked about, Dan talks about, building a base of what? You'll hear Dan Paff talk about
Mhm.
that. And so Tom would say fit for purpose. And so we talked a lot about that on that call that
I
day. And
like that.
so that comes to mind a lot when I'm writing workouts. It's like, what's this workout for? Are we fit
Right.
for purpose, or are we just fit? Right.
Mhm.
And like, what kind of fit does a high jumper need to be? And I know
Right.
you didn't want to talk X's and O's, but
Yeah.
just from
That's
that
philosophy. Yeah,
with
I'm with you.
yeah
Yeah.
with Coach Paff, learning a
Mhm.
ton from him, and then
Mhm.
just the conversations we had. So Vince Anderson and Dan Paff would be two huge ones,
Mhm.
and then Vern Gambetta, just different things from him over the years, and then Lauren Seagrave, just from when I was in college. Coach Guthrie brought him in, so
Yeah.
just some of the big names that I don't know that they even know who I am,
Mhm.
but have learned a ton from them. Oh, Vince knows me; he's said hi to me when I've seen him, and I think Coach Paff would know me if I saw him. But anyway, just a ton from those guys. But then, like you said, the other ones, just you're at a meet and you're just chatting with other coaches,
Mhm.
and just seeing how other coaches coach and asking them, why did you do it that way? Or just those conversations.
Mhm.
And so all of that is hugely important.
I love that. If you're listening, he mentioned Boo Schexnayder, Dan Paff. I thought you mentioned another person. Those two have been on the podcast. And then Vince Anderson has been on the podcast through his topics at some clinics I've been able to record and have them on the show. So if you're interested in those, go check those out. Um, I love that. Coaching education changed my life. Boo Schexnayder changed my life. So
Yeah.
I respect that a lot. I always get worried, and so far it's actually been 0 out of 100, 0%. If someone were to say, "Oh yeah, coaching education," no, I just do what I did when I was an athlete. It's like, oh brother, things have changed. Like
Yeah,
you
dude.
need to you
Yeah.
need to catch up a little bit.
Yeah. What I learned from Guthrie for sure is the base. But I've learned so much,
Yeah, absolutely.
through all the coaches association
Mhm.
sessions. Some of it's X's and O's, and some of it's philosophical.
That's
You
right.
know,
Yeah, absolutely.
both from Vince and Dan. I've learned some X's and O's stuff, but definitely some overarching principles um,
Absolutely.
from both of them too that are absolutely foundational to what I do daily.
One of the things that I'd like to start doing here on the podcast, so I'm gonna guinea pig you,
All
Mason.
right, I'll be your
Uh,
pilot.
yeah, and maybe I should have mentioned this before we hit record. It's not controversial,
Go ahead.
but what I'd like to do is pick your brain a little bit on the state of track and field, and really like what are you thinking? And what I mean by that is, um, maybe D2 is thinking about going to regionals, and so I'd like to have a conversation. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just making up examples here, but what's
Sure.
going on in track and field that you're curious or interested in, or fighting against? What's going on in track and field in your sphere?
Man, that's a whole other 2-hour conversation.
Yeah,
Um,
I need to start shortening. I really am fascinated by
yeah,
our guest's high school experience because I think that talking about base, that's the base of where we get to in today's world.
yeah,
But I want to start turning a little bit more to like current events type stuff
yeah,
while also doing the bio. So
yeah. You
for a
brought
couple
up maybe
minutes here.
four different paths I could go down there, and maybe I'll stick with the one you started with, the state of track and field.
Yeah.
There's I think a lot being said of that from coaches at various levels. If you know Sam Seams at the Coaches Association, I think that's maybe his prime directive is being a steward of the state of track and field, and so maybe a lot of the things I say are from just different conversations at the Coaches Association. But
Mhm.
Sam said, a lot of years ago, just the idea of, making our sport fan friendly.
Mhm.
And so I think maybe that would be the focus of anything I say about the state of our sport, and just looking at what do we do. So for instance, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago now, I was on the road at a meet, and the Tyson meet was on it at Arkansas. It was going to be on ESPN. And so my dad was never a track guy, but became a track fan through watching me over the years. And so I think I don't remember what started the conversation, if I called him specifically about it or if he called me. But I think I said, "Hey, Dad, you got to catch the Tyson meet. It's going to be, all these big names are going to be there, whatever." And maybe it was a separate conversation with him, about well, who I think he watched it, and he's like, they never talked about who's winning the meet. And I was like, yeah, they don't keep score. He's like, what do you mean they don't keep score? That's the dumbest thing I ever heard of. How do you have an athletic contest and they don't keep score? And I was like, you know what, Dad, that's a really good point. So just from our sport perspective, right? People that coach the sport, people that were in the sport, you're the kind of fan that you're going to be for the rest of your life, no matter what. But if we want to be marketable to the general population, right? The general 50, 60-year-old guy who's just sitting there with the remote control watching ESPN, I would argue that watching the D1 championships is probably the best thing that we put on TV, for the average person who's just channel surfing,
Mhm.
because they're talking about the teams that are scoring points and all of that, and then the average, again, 40, 50, 60-year-old person watching TV is going, who won, right? When you watch college football, right? When you watch the NFL, you know the names of the guys. When you watch college football, how often do you watch a game and you don't know a single player on the team? You're just a Badger fan. You're
Right.
just a USC fan. And college track and field is that way. You're a Badger fan.
Right.
You don't know the name of a single guy on the Badgers track and field team, but
Right.
you're a Badger fan. And so you watch the NCAA championships, you're cheering for the Badgers. You
Mhm.
don't know that 21-year-old kid's name, but
Right.
you're cheering for him. And so when we can score a meet, or we can show that it's more than, are you tuning in to watch the 100 meters? Okay, it lasts 10 seconds.
Mhm.
You're not going to keep somebody there for an hour
Right.
to watch your show when they're just tuning in to watch Noah. Like,
Yeah.
no offense to Noah
Yeah.
Lyles, like
Yeah. Yeah.
they're tuning in to see Noah.
Mhm.
But in terms of the state of our sport, and getting people interested, that was the one thing my dad said once, was that's the
Yeah.
dumbest thing I ever heard. Well, I
I,
don't know who won.
Yeah,
So
hard to disagree. It's interesting to me on both high school and college level when you add men and women and high school boys and girls together, we're the most participated sport in all the sports, right? So you're more likely, I like to think about it this way, when you walk into the grocery store, you're more likely to bump into someone who did some form of track and field than someone who played football or basketball,
yeah,
baseball, etc., right? And yet we cannot get those people to a track meet. I'm
yeah.
100% with you. So what are you do anything like for meets that you host or meets that you go to, meets that you choose? You get to choose what meets you go to. Are you picking team scored only meets? Are you encouraging? Maybe there's a meet you go to that they don't do it, but you're like, hey, coach, we'd love it even more if you scored
Yeah,
it.
so the problem with that is, so after COVID, that started happening more. The Tyson meet, they started inviting teams instead of individuals. They started scoring the meet. Meets that we go to, we started scoring everything. And then the 25-26 rule book, there's something in there that says, in a scored meet, so about the championships, right? If you're at the national meet and you scratch an event, you're out the rest of the meet.
Yeah, honest effort.
Yeah. Yeah. And no, not honest effort. That's a different
Oh,
thing. And most conference championships will have it that way, right? You can't enter 5 events and only run one of them. You got to enter. You got to run all the events you're entered in.
yeah. Okay. Okay.
Right?
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you.
And
It is
maybe
past the
that's
honest effort. No,
yeah,
I'm with you.
honest
Yeah,
effort rule. That's not in the
yeah.
book anymore. Whatever.
Is that right?
Anyways, yeah, it's called something different,
Oh,
because
okay.
honest effort. Like, well, what do you mean honest effort? I got out of the blocks. I walked around the track. I
Yeah,
finished the
yeah,
race. Right? So
yeah, yeah.
we've changed that, and it's fine.
Okay.
But my point is, the new rule says any scored meet. If you scratch an event, you're out of the meet. So lots of coaches
Uh,
like to run a kid in the 60 prelim, but they don't want to run him in the final because they got to run the 2 and the 4x4 later or whatever. So once they scratch their kid from the 60 final, they're out of the meet. Well, that's the host school. And I'm not going to score this meet so that my sprinter doesn't have to run the 60 final because I want him running the 200 and the whatever later. And so people are scoring meets less now because they want the flexibility to pull their kid out of a race. Or, hey, we're going to enter these two. We're going to enter the 8 and the mile. We're going to see which one's more competitive in the heat sheets, and that's the one we'll race.
This may be
And then we'll scratch the other one.
this may be a bad example, but the football coach may want his quarterback to only run 7 versus 7, but in the game it's 11 versus 11. Tough noogie. You got to run 11 versus 11 or not play.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying, and so maybe there is it could I ask then, does there need to be a coaching philosophy mentality that, hey, if you're going to run the 60 and they have finals, then they need to run the 60. Don't put them in
Yeah,
the
you're
60,
never
the
gonna.
2, and the 4,
Yeah,
and the
you're
four
not
by
gonna.
four if you're not really doing that.
Yeah, you're not going to convince every coach in the country to do that. So,
It's true, and I'm sure there's plenty of I know this for a fact. There's plenty of NFL coaches who don't like the rules, like this
yeah,
kickoff rule. There's a lot that hate that. Guess what? It's still the rule, guys.
yeah. So that's where this new rule came in. Is more coaches starting scoring meets a few years ago, which was cool. But now this rule is there, and nobody has said this to me. But the meets we go to that used to be scored, they're not scoring anymore. And I know that those places have athletes that they want to make sure, hey, we don't want to
Sure.
run the hurdle final because he's got the 200 coming up and we're trying to
Yeah.
qualify for nationals. So again, I'm not saying either of them is good or bad, but I just know that scoring meets is more exciting you walk into the office on Monday and the athletic director says, hey, how'd the meet go? You give them examples of things
We
that
had
went
two
well.
we
If you
had two
can,
qualifiers. We set a
yeah,
school
well,
record. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
don't
yeah.
get me started on the qualifiers thing. Um,
Yeah. You're right. We could have
but
done 2 more hours just on this.
yeah. So, but when the athletic director sees that you won the meet, right? That's promotable, right? Or hey, there's 32 teams there. We got second. Cool. But if you can't say that, right? So it's just again going back to Sam Seams. What are the things that we can promote? What are the things that we can do to. But at the end of the day, the basketball coaches are saying this in their March Madness post game stuff. It's all about the student athlete. We want them to have a great experience. So we can say we want to promote the sport, but more importantly, we want the student athletes to have a great experience. So which one is it?
Oh, and those
So
can be
we can make
not
rules.
copacetic, not
Yeah.
incongruent.
So,
Oh.
right. So for instance, we want to fit a track and field meet into a 2 hour window for TV. Well, is that what's best for the student athlete?
Hmm.
I don't know. So I'm not
I've
saying
never
either one
thought
is good
about
or
that.
bad. I'm
Yeah,
just saying
I've
that
never
they
thought about
might
it that
be.
way.
Yeah. So like Division 1, they wanted to make sure that they can get their meet on ESPN. So we have Wednesday, Friday is the men's events.
Hmm.
Thursday, Saturday is the women's, except the multi, right? We can't call it men's day and
Hmm.
women's day because the multi messes that up.
Hmm.
But they were able to find a way to fit the
Right,
women's meet into a 2 hour window by not having men's. So now you've all of a sudden shortened the amount of time between the 200 and the 4x4 because
right,
there's no men's events.
right.
That's good for TV. Is it good for the student athlete?
Yeah,
Well, then you got to say, well, it's a coaching decision. You don't put them in both the 2 and the 4x4. Okay.
right.
So
Yeah.
again, I'm not saying either of these
No,
is good
no,
or
no.
bad.
This is super interesting because
That's where we're trying to say, are we making rules that are best for the student athlete, or are we making rules that are best to promote the sport?
sport.
Which one's more important?
Right, right. Yeah. Whose responsibility is that? Right, right. Is it the NCAA's and institutions' responsibility to make our sport better, or is it yeah, that because it did
And it, and
strike
it,
me when we first started talking with NCAA for the sponsorship of that, they kept, my thing is coaches, right? Like I'm always like, what are we doing for coaches? What are we doing for And they always like the student athlete experience. I'm like, yeah, yeah, I love the student athletes, but I love Mason. Mason's, my guy, I can affect those student athletes by making Mason's life better, but they are very big on the student athlete experience. That's a great point. And I did not think about those two things not necessarily being in line. Maybe some things are, but not necessarily in line. And I remember this argument about the Wednesday, Friday, Thursday, Saturday, and people saying, oh, sprint coaches were up in arms. You gave a great example, the doublers, 100 and 4x1s and things like that. And yet, young people are resilient. They've adapted. Go look at the meets. We're running faster than ever. We're setting college records left and right, so they're adaptable. But the main thing I took away from that was what's best for the sport, what's best for the student athlete aren't. I always thought of, like, I would have told you, like, oh yeah, they're aligned if we do better for the sport, and it's like, oh no, no, there are components where It's maybe not
Well,
mine.
and
That's interesting.
the other question I ask, and not to give you the answer to it, but the question I'll ask is, does it really matter if we're promoting, like, does it matter if our sport has more fans? Does it really matter? I mean, it may.
What a
Is any
question you
athletic
ask
director
there, Mason.
is any athletic director going to cut track and field if there aren't fans in the stands?
Well, yeah, we've seen that. Oh,
Who's going to cut? Who's going to cut
that being the
women's track and
reason
field? You're
that
never
be
cut.
they're not. That's not the reason why they cut it. Is because yeah,
Correct.
yeah, okay, okay,
It's not
yeah,
because
yeah,
there's no
yeah,
fans in the
yeah,
stands.
yeah, 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 yeah. I
Track
got you.
and
I got
field,
you. I
like
got
you
you.
said, it's the most participated sport in the country. Who's cutting the sport, right? Are there less opportunities because we're not on ESPN? There's less marketing opportunities. There's less opportunities for the pros, maybe, but is Division II track and field worse off if there are less fans? No. I'll go back to Coach Guthrie, maybe end the conversation with this. The year I was coaching there in 2004, he coached the men, but the women, he's a very magnetic guy. You like him. So the women come up to him before the 4x4 at nationals, really nervous. Coach Guthrie, we're nervous. We're nervous. 4x4 is coming up. Tell us something. And I don't say this to belittle sport. I don't. But his comment was, ladies, outside of this building, there is probably no one else on earth that knows or cares that this event is going on right now. Just go run for each other, have fun. Again, not
Mhm.
to belittle our sport.
Yeah,
Sport
yeah,
is so important.
yeah,
We learn
yeah,
so much from it. There's so much value in
yeah,
sport. But at the end of the day, unless you're
yeah.
the NFL, like, I couldn't tell you what's going on in the NBA right now.
Right.
I don't know and I don't care.
Same. Yeah.
So that's a major sport with a lot of money. I don't know and I don't care. So at the end of the day, does it really matter whether track and field has more fans or not? This is an opportunity for college students to do something to better their lives, to give them something to do. There's so many great things about track and field. And again, I'm not saying yes or no. You can see obviously which side of the fence I lean on. But at the end of the day, does it really matter if there's a lot of track and field fans? I mean, curling still exists, and nobody really cares about curling except 2 weeks every 4 years,
Yeah,
right?
they're the ultimate every 4 years, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
Mason,
so
that's I love being challenged and making me think that's really interesting to me because then I start thinking about like, okay, I'll ask myself this question. Why do I want fans in the stands? Like, oh my God, is it actually ego? Do I want to just be involved in a sport that like in NFL is like, oh, they sell out 60, 80,000. I don't know what it is. Is that why? Is it ego or is it what's best for the sport? Yeah, man, Mason, you brought up a really good point. See, these are why I got to start doing. I appreciate you letting me be the guinea pig because I need to start that earlier so we can flesh it out just a little bit more.
yeah,
Although I love this little chunk right here. This was very,
yeah.
there is some what's the word selfish reasons I host this podcast, and this is one of them right here. It's like, oh, I learned because I did not think of the student athlete and the best for the sport. I like I said, I'd have told you like, oh yeah, they're probably in sync, and it's like, oh no, no, that's really good.
Yeah. Well, and I think often they are, but not always.
Yeah, I think that's the lesson is like they can be, but they're not lock and step. They're not 100%. What's bad for the sport may be good for a student athlete and vice versa. And again, that question of like, well, whose responsibility is it for the sport? I don't know that it is NCAA's uh, responsibility to help track or any other sport be better for the fan or more enticing for fans. Mason, brother, one last question, and we'll wrap up here. As you are this, are you going? Is this it's spring of 2026? Is this the 22nd season or 21st season?
I don't know. I started fall of '04, however many years that is.
I went to school in Alabama, so math's not my strong suit. So I'm going to ask it this way, Mason. As you look towards the future, whether it's this season, next season, 5, 10 years from now, what's got you excited about Winona State track and field?
Everything. Yeah, we've got a really big group of freshmen, and anytime you bring in big group of freshmen, there's just so much energy that's just different with 18-year-olds that are starting something new. So we got a lot of talent. We got a large group of freshmen and sophomores. So just a lot of energy, a lot of excitement. We've got an outstanding coaching staff. We've got a great university. And everything in life. I read once that most people that quit their jobs do so because of interpersonal relationships, not because they dislike their job.
Right.
And I will say that the people we have here are amazing. And so there may be places that have more resources or better this or better that, whatever, but we've got great people. And at the end of the day, it makes it fun to be at work, whether it's our athletes or my fellow coaches or our administrators. We just have great people, and it makes it a really great place to be a part of.
I love that, man. The job is the job, and I know we like to put coaches sometimes our number one identity, but you know, there's a lot of other top. Son is more important than being coach. Well, the son. I meant you being your son
Yeah,
is way more important to being a coach. And so, I know we have so much passion being coaches, but it is a job. At the end of the day, it's a calling. I get that, but you know what? I'm sure accountants think that's a calling too.
yeah,
But there's other things in life, and so I'm happy that to hear about the people you surround yourself with as well, not just the
yeah,
100-meter dash and the mile and all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
Mason, the most valuable thing, the most expensive thing you can ever give me is your time, my brother. And I'm just so grateful for this time today. It was fascinating to learn your journey. I would have pegged you as a coach. I've known you for long enough now. I would have said, oh, yeah, this is the kind of guy that knew he was going to be a coach in high school. I'm completely shocked that it was completely the other way. It was years, almost a decade later before you're like, yeah, I like this coaching thing. Let's figure it out. Your first coaching gig is, I mean, it's still ludicrous that that's how it happened. I love it. And I love that discussion that we had there at the end too, just about the topic of track and field in general. I appreciate your
Yeah.
openness and authenticity, my friend. Thank you so much for being with us
Appreciate
today.
it. Fun
Absolutely.
talking with you, Mike.
Good. Guys and gals, thank you for being here. I'm going to keep this outro real short because I've gone over his time and I still got to do my little outro with him. So thank you so much for being here again. So blessed that you press play today. Make sure you check out the library of former guests. We mentioned a lot of Gill Podcast alums. Sam Seams, he's an alum of the Gill Podcast. Dan Paff, Boosh Schexnayder, many, many others. And maybe some future ones that you mentioned as well. Hint, hint. So appreciate you guys checking out the library. Check us out next week. We'll do it all over again. Have some fun. Thanks, guys.